like to call to order the April 11th committee meeting of the Milton Area School Board. We have roll call, please.
Mr. Frederick? Here. Mr. Hosterman? Here. Mr. Hunt? Here. Ms. Kessler?
Here.
Mr. Moser? Here. Dr. Strasser?
Here.
Mr. Harris? Here. Dr. Weaver? Here. Mrs. Rance?
Here. Will you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, liberty and justice for all.
Do we have any comments from visitors this evening, Mr. Fink?
Received any?
We're going to move right into executive committee. Discussion this evening is going to be elementary K-5 alignment discussion.
So as part of this discussion, we're going to begin. Our kindergarten team is here. We discussed with you as a board the badging system. So we're going to lead in with their ideas and their process they use to work through the badging system. So we're going to start there, and then we'll dive in a little bit more into alignment and the secondary schedule. So Dr. Kirkpatrick, I'll turn it over to you, the elementary principals and the kindergarten team.
Sure. Last time we met when we had our education presentation, this was part of that. And I know you had some questions about that, and we wanted to be able to take some time and provide a complete presentation and give you an opportunity to ask questions with the developers of the kindergarten badging system who are sitting with us. Lauren Steiner, Jess Joseph, Courtney Baker, Jen Swineford, Bree Herman, and Lorene Romania are all here from the kindergarten team. So I believe you have a handout at your station, and I'm not sure who's up, but ladies, take it away.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jess Joseph, and I will be speaking first on behalf of the kindergarten team regarding the kindergarten badging system. This is something that we have been working on a little bit last school year, but mainly this school year, to try to revamp the way that we see kindergartners progress within the school system and in the classroom. So the first slide we have is, how is grading different in kindergarten when compared to other grades? Well, think of your 5- and 6-year-old coming into the school building. There are no requisitional standards, or they don't need to come in knowing their letters, their sounds, their name. They're here as bright-eyed, bushy-tailed little kids coming in, ready to learn as little sponges. And we want to, and these kindergartners, they need that self-motivating way to learn and gain skills. They want to learn. And it's our job as kindergarten teachers to want them to love to learn. These kids don't know the difference between a 60% and a 90%. What they do know is, I know all of my letters. I know all of my letter sounds, but a grade does not encourage that self-motivation skill. It just is a number that they see on a paper, not, wow, this is fabulous and great, and I love to learn, sort of thing. Kindergarten students understand the concept of mastering a skill rather than earning a grade. That's just like kind of what I said. They understand the concept of, I know how to count to 20. I know how to tie my shoes. I know that I can read 20 kindergarten sight words. They don't understand is, I have a 66% in math. What does that mean? I have a 90% in math. What does that mean? I have an example of this. I know we all have this in our classrooms. The third marking period is a very fundamental marking period in kindergarten. It's when kiddos are really showing us their growth. I have a student in particular who has a 66% on ELA. That child is considered failing in kindergarten. That child also this marking period mastered his uppercase and lowercase letter identification. That child knows all of their letter sounds. That child knows numbers 0 to 20. That child can write numbers 1 through 10. So having that 66% is telling that parent, wow, what am I doing wrong? But with the badging system that we're looking at, that child would have went home with at least 5 badges to show what he is earning and what he mastered in the kindergarten classroom. And I know this is just one child, but I have at least 5 or 6 in my classroom alone where this would have happened. And I know my colleagues as well have also experienced this. So why does it need to change? Giving teachers the flexibility within our classroom to meet the students' various needs. A percentage is hard to depict where a child is academically. Badge shows the skills that they have mastered. We know the skills they have mastered, but with the badging system, we'll be able to base kids off of the skills that they know and they don't know, and work more in small group settings with our students to really really go in on the areas that they need to work on those skills that need to be mastered before they enter first grade. Instead of teaching whole group for a majority of our day, we were hoping with this that we'll be able to teach small group and center-based learning for a majority of our day and really get to focus on those skills, those students' needs. This also will help the parents' teacher communication within our classrooms. When a parent asks, what can I work on with my student? This will give a clear-cut example of what they need to work on. Because with the badging system, this is in a later slide, we have a book for the student, we have a book for the teacher, but we also have a book for the parent. So the parent is getting to see exactly what skills their child does not know to help them work at home with them to help them earn these badges. This also encourages students to work towards mastery of skills on a timeline that is based on their own developmental need. Not every child is the same. That's something we hear in education a lot. So the badging system is very fluid. Way that we haven't really talked about how often we would give out badges, but with discussions and research done from other districts, there is a badging ceremony every about 2 weeks. So that children are being rewarded for their academic progress every 2 weeks, not every marking period, every 2 weeks. Will a report go out every marking period? Yes, because I think it's important to see what skills that child has learned in that 9 weeks and also where they go. But every child is different. Some kids coming in knowing all their letters. And that's where we would take all that student and work on skills such as CBC words or sight words, reading simple sentences, those types of things. And this will create a positive outlook on learning and growth. It also will help students to have accountability for their learning. I know I've skipped that in the last one, but the Danielson framework, which is something we are kind of not graded on, but held, our standards are based for teachers are off of the Danielson framework. And a big chunk of that is child-led learning. This has children, our students, being involved with their learning, with their progress. They're going to get to put those badges in their book. They are going to see what the skills they need to work on. They're going to take that home and hold accountability for themselves and motivate them. Because we want kids to love to learn. And what's more fun than getting to earn a cool, colorful sticker and putting in a book for accomplishing something? That is just very telling. Okay. And I know a big one is skills-based versus standards-based learning. So standards are separated into specific skills. Grades often measure an assortment of criteria, such as participation, work completion, etc. Skill-based measures exactly what a child can do. Skills can be earned in increments as they progress to a larger goal. So it's not just can I count to 100? We have it broken down based off what we're doing now. And you count to 20. And you count to 50, 75, 100. It's a progression of learning. Just it's not, you're working towards the bigger goal. And then we have the objective versus subjective statement, and the groups of badges work together to meet an overall standard. So standards, I don't know. Standards, our learning, everything we do in the classroom is based off standards. Legally, that's what we have to do. They help guide our instruction. But within those standards, there are different subgroups of learning. For example, I know CBC words, blending sounds, isolation of sounds, that's all one standard in kindergarten. But we broke up all of the goals within that standard, and they're a badge. Because that's all something, according to the state of Pennsylvania, that child needs to learn in kindergarten. Okay. I'm going to pass it over to Mrs. Steiner.
Okay, so now you hear the background and the why. Now we can look at what this actually looks like and what it will look like for us as teachers, for parents, for our students. So we will have specific documents for students that we will keep in our classroom. We will have a badge booklet that will have their stickers in them as they earn them. There will be a separate document that will go home to families each marking period. So we're still assessing all the time. We're giving badges all the time, but we still will have that marking period checklist where you will see exactly what they've earned and when they've earned it. So the first document is the student document that you have in front of you. Can you open that up on the screen?
You just click the student document, it will pop right up.
Okay, so that's not the right one. So in front of you, there's one that says student document. Yeah, so that's what we'll use to check what they know. So they're uppercase letters, they're lowercase letters, sound identification, colors, and this will go on throughout the year. So we'll use the same document. We have a color coordinated key for you that we will keep monitoring them. When do they learn it? Do they get it in the first marking period? Are they a child that came in knowing everything? Or are they not getting their letters or colors or sounds until the third, fourth marking period potentially? So this will travel with them the entire marking period, but this is something that they will look at, they can see. This is part of our documentation too. The teachers will keep a hold of this so that we can monitor what exactly they know. Currently, we do a marking period checklist that we send home every marking period that looks pretty much the same. It just gets a little bit bigger. This is the collective, what are we looking at for the entire year? Letter sounds, letter writing, those things. The other document that you have in front of you is a parent document. So it just lists all of our standards that we broke down into skills. And this can go home to families each marking period. So this would replace the report card that would have a grade, and it would say, these are the skills that I've learned, and this is when I've learned them. So this is more for the parent each specific marking period. And then the last thing you have in front of you is just some examples of the badges. So they were created specific for Milton, and these correlate to each one of those skills that we are assessing. So this, we're still kind of working through all of these. You'll see there's a lot of language in some of those because we're still working through what this will actually look like, what skills we're actually looking at. Maybe some is a standard, but do we have to assess it? I'm not sure. So we're working through a lot of that still. But these are the documents that we currently have created and what it may look like. So right now we have language arts, math, and then a section for school readiness that we'll focus on in the first marking period. And then this is our timeline that we've kind of looked at. We started at the end of last school year, talking about it with Dr. Kirkpatrick. We met with an administrator from Halifax who is currently doing this. She was extremely helpful. We've looked at other local report cards that are doing similar things. And then we've worked together as a team on our professional development days. For the future, we plan to work over the summer to make sure we have the booklet laid out, have that ready to go for the beginning of the school year. And we anticipate meeting with first grade to see what their thoughts are about what our kids need coming into first grade and what that will look like. And then just some questions that came up while we were talking about this. When are we planning to launch? Would be the beginning of next school year. How is this being communicated to parents? We're hoping to bring back our kindergarten specific orientation. That way administration as well as the teachers can talk specifically to the parents about this change, what it looks like, what it means for them and for their children. And then will there be science and social studies standard badges? There will be. We're still working through the standards changeover for science and social studies. We will teach our standards as we normally do in science and social studies, but they won't have a specific badge yet. That is coming. And that is it for us. If you have questions, we are all willing to engage in that conversation as well as our administration.
I have one. I'll start. So I am raising or have raised 4 kids. Okay. Currently with the current report card system, everything's kept private. It's between the teacher, the child, and the parent. Okay, so 3 of my daughters would bust their butts and race to complete all these badges. Okay. And want to be the first ones in front of the room at the ceremony to collect them all. One of those 3 is going to brag amongst all her friends about how many badges she got and how fast she got. And the 4th one would react to the bragging as, that's it, I'm done, I'm not competing. I'm not even gonna try to get any of these badges. So how are you gonna handle those scenarios? Because as you talk, that's what I think. And I know there's been things done in this school, like we don't play certain games anymore because we single out the smart kids versus the not so smart kids. But to me, this is like, I can see myself in every one of these scenarios, depending on which one of my kids.
So to address the first part of the child who wants to get through all their badges right away, that is a work, we're working on that. And that's why we are meeting with first grade to see those kids who are really excelling and mastering all their badges, picking up on it, what's next for them. That is something that work in progress. That is something we are working on. And it may not be ready next year, but that is something we plan on creating as a team, working with administration, working with first grade. As far as the child who doesn't want to do it, look at all these kids who are earning all these badges. We also are having in place a working in progress badge. So you may not have mastered that specific skill, but guess what? You now know 6 letters instead of 2. That is working in progress. So those kiddos are still going to be earning a badge, so to say, but it's not the overall badge. Because we don't, like you said, want that child to get discouraged.
And I know how she thinks. She'll think, okay, I'm behind now. I guess I'll always be behind. Heck with it. I'm done. I mean, that's how she's wired.
I think, however, these are the types of discussions that we deal with on a daily basis with our students. We have all of these competitions, fighting, bickering. The same goes with our sight words, with our letters. Some kids know all their letters and some kids don't. And we still want to praise the kids that know them and work with the kids that don't. So I think these are things that we deal with as they come up, because it's just what we do on a daily basis. When you're talking about a 5-year-old mentality, I get what your point is. I just think that we do this every day. We know how to kind of talk with them. We know how to make them excited about what they are doing versus what they haven't done yet.
Right.
If that makes sense.
And if I can pop in, I know we really focus on like growth mindset and that not everyone gets there at the same time. Like you're not there yet, but you will get there. And using the badging system is going to let us have those small groups where we can really focus on those kids that need remediation and then focus on the kids that need enrichment. So we'll be meeting the needs of all the students if we can do this.
Okay, and I have no plans to cycle back to kindergarten, so like this is just food for thought.
Is this a pre-assembled program that we're buying into, or is it something you're developing on your own?
We have developed all of the things that are in front of you. We have talked to other districts that have done this program, but everything is customized to Milton.
Any other questions?
I have a few questions.
Yes.
Is the ultimate goal to keep the badges just at kindergarten, or are we looking at this across all of elementary school?
We haven't talked about that specifically, but we have looked at this possibly being applicable to first grade in similar circumstances. Beyond that, though, we haven't had any further conversations in thinking about the rest of elementary.
Okay. To piggyback off of Eric, are we going to regulate and pace how many badges one student can get in one marking period? Or are we going to push them to get a certain amount of badges within one marking period?
I just feel not all skills are taught every marking period. So like first marking period, I know we talked about just doing those school readiness skills. Second marking period, by that point, we have taught almost all of our letters, almost all of our letter sounds. So there is not one child is going to earn all however many badges in one marking period. I just think the way that we teach does not allow that. So it's not one kid, it's going to get all these things and these other kids are going to be like, oh, well, I didn't get anything, or I only got 3 badges. It won't be like that just by the way we teach and the way that the topics are taught.
We do recognize the importance of pacing, though, and making sure that we're able to cover the standards throughout the course of the kindergarten year.
Well, I can feel for Eric. I have one that would want the badges immediately and do everything she could to get them, and one that could care less if he got any badges. So I would think that would also be an issue. My other question is, when you talk about small group, when you're in a small group, what are the other kids going to be doing?
They would be doing like center-based learning, where it can be leveled for each group. You have high groups, low groups, medium groups, and they would be working independently at that time in their small group at their table.
Which is not new.
Yeah, this is something we've done.
That's something that
Yes.
we've done.
Thank you.
I have a question. So the teacher from Halifax, maybe for instance, that you spoke to, and she presented her ideal badge program, was she able to give you a comparison of what it was like before and after, what was gained by changing the process to this? Was there a great deal of growth with the students?
I think she spoke a lot about the teachers. She spoke about how it takes, I don't know, Daphne, if you want to help me with this a little bit.
Sure.
Go ahead. I'll let you.
I mean, she spoke a lot about motivation and the excitement towards earning the badges. She talked specifically about skills and how important it was that students understand what skills they're actually working on. And the skills are written from the standards in terms of I can statements. So I can write my first name. I can do this. So that was really, I think, the big takeaways and sort of the movement behind the philosophy for making the move, the explicit understanding of what skills students are attempting to attain.
Go ahead, Lauren. Too, like
Pardon me?
having students buy into it and want to earn those badges was something I really pulled from her meeting with us.
Thank you.
I have one quick question. So if a student is learning maybe the ABCs or something, and they get their badge, they successfully learned them, that marking period, are they going to, like, are you guys going to push that throughout the marking periods as well? Or is it just going to be you get your badge and you're done?
So then after they learn their letters, they would move on to letter sounds. Like each skill will progressively get harder as the year goes on. So from letter sounds, CVC words, and then from CVC words, maybe sentence dictation and sentence writing. It would build upon itself as the year goes.
Also add that all of these badges are things that we are already
Yes.
doing in our classrooms. Everything that's on that sheet is something your child, if they went through Milton in the past, however, like how long have you guys been teaching? These are all skills that your child has learned. It's just been presented in a different format. This is to just have, we want students to love learning. We want them to love to come to school. This is just another way for them to be involved
And motivated.
and motivated in their learning.
So to summarize, this has nothing to do with you changing your practices.
No,
within-
No.
our practices will stay.
This is solely how you're reporting student progress to parents and tracking it.
Yes.
And to add, I'm sorry, Brett.
Just making it a very basic elementary visual level.
Right. To add to what Jess said and to answer Josh's question, once students master their letters and their sounds, the most important part after that is the authentic application of those skills to something like reading or writing. And so that can be any levels. Once they master those skills, then they're actually applying them to real life work.
So I think another important part of this is about 12, 13 years ago, everyone in this room that's been in education, whether you were in any school district, we were hit with the standards-based push. We were hit with PSSAs, we were hit, I mean, it was 20 years ago, but we were really pushed into that standards-based era, which is fine. It's accountability, it's important. I will tell you, as a former K-12 principal, I think we lost our 5, 6, and 7-year-olds in that process a little bit. We try to look for the silver lining of COVID. I think we recognize that in the past few years, we need to return to certain skills and certain applications and certain ways of doing things with our kids, but where it's not necessarily a change in practice. It's a reminder of we're here for the kids, we're here for the students. And I think we went through that process. I think it happened here, if I remember as a parent, right? We had standards on the report cards. We used the standards language because that's what the state wanted. Kindergartners and parents of kindergartners were going, what in the world does that even mean? Why are you using all, like, where is this going? We go to percentages, we go back and forth. All school districts were facing this challenge. What I'm really excited about with this is that the first of all, the teacher leadership on it, but I think it's going back and reminding us that we are here for the kids. We also have to be realistic that our kindergarten students, as they come in, are dealing with a lot. Every year, our kids are dealing with more and more. So it's on these ladies standing in front of you to find new creative ways. And I agree. I think you always have that competition in our classrooms of kids, but I think what they do is they find a way to make it work. I don't know how kindergarten teachers do it. I don't know how they day in and day out with that kind of environment, because it's intense, it's high energy and high emotions at all times. But I think it's a return. I think in some ways I'd like to see that, a return to some of the necessary skills and remembering we're dealing with 5-year-olds. We are dealing with 5-year-olds that need to love school. If we think reading matters by the time they're in first, second grade, need to get back to that. Some of the greatest gurus that are out there right now are willing to say during COVID that they realize, wow, we kind of got ahead of ourselves in certain areas. So I think this is a great tool for parents, a great tool for our teachers to use. And it's like anything, we explore it, we work on it, and we see where it takes us in a year. And we see what the benefits have been and what issues. But I think it's exciting to see the motivational side for our kids. So kudos to our team for putting the work in, and I'm excited to see where it goes as we move forward.
Any other questions?
I think the only question I have is, with the change in place, is there going to be something to help identify concern areas for kindergartners that maybe have areas that they don't develop as they should, for parents to understand as they look through this? Being a parent that sent kids to elementary school, I literally never understood any of the jargon teachers said. I left that to my wife because it always changed and it's hard. So as long as there's a way to explain that to parents, if this is better for kids, that's fine. But as long as parents are able to actually understand what it means to them, like is their kid developing as they should, learning as they should, or if there are areas that they should be concerned as they go along, I think that's a big thing.
And part of this that we plan on making with the badging book is a parent booklet to describe each badge in more depth. And I think that's something we could also look at is like, when should they be earning this badge?
That's what I'm looking at, is to see,
Yeah.
is like there, if they can walk in, like I had a daughter that went to school and she could spell her whole name when she was in kindergarten, like the first marking period. But I had other kids who came in, they could barely write the letter A. So identifying at what point in the school year should they be able to hit these goals? I think that's the big thing, is like, if we're making the change so the kids are encouraged to learn, I think the parents need to be able to see, here's where they should be as they go through the school year.
Yeah, with that book, I think
The
that's
parent book.
perfect. Yeah, one that.
Each badge is and when typically
Yeah.
throughout the year they should be earning that.
And I guess the other thing is there a plan in place if you have advanced learners that you aren't like slowing them down so they aren't getting too ahead of themselves? Because there are a lot of natural learners out there that they can pick up the alphabet and know it immediately. But then 1, 2, 3 is like Chinese. So is there a plan, is the ability to continue to adapt as you know?
So I think it goes back to just what we do every day, all the time, is we differentiate our learning, our teaching every day, because we will always, whether we're doing badging or grading with a percentage or a standards base, we have kids ready for second grade and we have kids that can't write their name.
As long as
That's
you're,
just what we do every day anyway, regardless of this.
as long as you're encouraging that, because I have had kids I've had my own kids come to the school to go through and have been held back in their reading abilities because they were getting too far advanced. And that's all. I just want to make sure there's a plan in place that if you do have kids that are really good readers, it was detrimental in her interest to want to read as she got older, because when she was a kid and she was learning and she just knew it, it was kind of an impact. So as long as there's a plan that may happen. That's all.
You mentioned a parent's guide. Since we have more and more families where English isn't spoken at home, are we planning on multi-language support for those? Perfect.
If we could wrap this up to hear from the principals, that would be great.
Students that transfer from other local districts, they employ a very similar system. We're not like, we see practically. It's actually really helpful as kids come in to say, this is this student. Even with the standards where it's this big umbrella, this drills down to a specific skill in the standard, and it makes it really easy to identify the stability. What was just mentioned there, one of the things that we've had a conversation with since the beginning is, what does this look like scaffolding up to our advanced learners? What does it look like scaffolding down to our students who struggle? How can we, while also kind of projecting everybody forward? The work that this team specifically put in line with the coaches who are excellent work as well with that specifically. I feel very good about the product. I was not I want you to know, I was not on board with this. I'm a traditional grades guy. That's the background I call myself. Like, this team is sold to me, and working through the process, I'm fully on board. I have seen their reports from other districts. I've seen what they have. It just confirms the work that we're doing. As a father of 2 children, if this was work hard being home, I would feel very good about my life. So I can support her, I can encourage her to encourage. And that to me is, and that's what I want. So it's good work by Dr. Patrick, by the coaches as well. And they really did a fantastic job. It's not a finished product. We've already had conversations about areas that we need to talk down and things like that. But this is, I think, good structure. jump in where Mr. Decker just left off, the reason we moved from standards to percentages was so we could have it open dialogue with parents where they truly understood where their students were. We thought that was critically important for parents to have that understanding. Our kindergarten team has done what I feel to be tremendous work in helping us evolve that conversation even further. Where not only parents are going to have a clear understanding of student skill acquisition, but we can put that on our students as well. Student ownership learning is so critical, K-12. And if we can start to build those practices in kindergarten, we're really going to reap the benefits of that students that are in immediate school, middle school, high school. Along with that, our kindergarten team does an amazing job of creating a culture of learning in the classrooms. And I believe that with a system like our kindergarten bachelor program, there's going to be some really meaningful conversations about teaching, student learning, happening in the classroom. So I would be really excited about what games we can see that are awesome. Well said by my colleague. Ladies have taken it upon themselves to understand that our students need a different way rather than percentages. Have that vision. That's what we want our kids to do. Our teachers here have exemplified what it is to be the highest level of the Danielson movement and be able to take what they're teaching kids and let them apply it. So I'm so proud to see them up here and not have to explain what they're talking about because they are so invested in what they presented tonight. And I, as a first grade teacher, when I taught, would only hope that I would have a kindergarten team that would share this information with me. I know exactly where it's at. We have portfolios, we have writing samples, but this gives you that skill base, understanding where a child is, whether they're middle, bottom, top. Appreciation, kindergarten class, every step of individual kid, each 5-year-old kid. I think the main thing that we really get is that kids, 5 and 6-year-old age, they need to come and want to do school and love and embrace that happen. That's the most important thing, because this is their first experience that they're having in the school setting. Some kids don't go to daycares or have preschool to attend. They make this a place they feel safe, they can learn. And thank everyone for coming tonight.
I'm sorry, Chris, I have a couple questions yet. I'm going over all this in my head. Thank you. One of the questions I do have is how do we incorporate iReady into this? Does iReady just go away or do those grades no longer matter? Like, how does that play out? I currently have a daughter in kindergarten, so I'm trying to picture all of this as if we were doing it.
iReady is not going to go away. So iReady is not a grade. It is, but it is used as another tool. What? It's a program, yes, but it's a program to help kids work on the skills that they need, that are being taught, yes, in math and reading. So it's just another tool to help them not get caught up, but
Either enrich or remediate.
Yeah.
It's not going away. We're still going to be using iReady. It just won't be, there won't be a badge for iReady.
Yeah.
It'll still be a program that we use and we're still gonna be using Ready Math in our classrooms. And so the curriculum's not changing.
iReady has its own badges within the
Within the system,
program
yes.
itself.
So when you're getting like when you're doing worksheets in the classroom and things, are they just earning badges for those? Or am I going to see like my kid got a 10 out of 10 on this or whatever it might be?
So
How do those play out into this badge system?
that we're.
I think those worksheets that we do in our classroom definitely tell us what they are able to do based off the lesson we taught, and we'd still be using those. I send mine home. I'm not sure what everyone else does, but you, as a parent, you'd still be able to see that. Pretty sure we all
And
send
that
them home.
one work, that list sheet
Because another thing, I think we've talked about possibly sending that home of what letters your kid specifically knows.
Yeah, like a copy of that
A
each
copy
marking
of the-
period.
that each marking period, and it was color coded, so you know what marking period that was. after.
So if you have a child that already knows 67 sight words by the first marking period in kindergarten, what would your next step be?
Moving on to first grade sight words.
So moving, so would they earn a badge then for mastering first grade? Or so many first grade words? Like where can they keep achieving or do they stop at the kindergarten level?
That's something we're still working on, if there will be badges for the enrichment, or if it's, we're gonna keep track of that enrichment.
And how many badges does my kindergarten need to earn to move to first grade? How do I look at this thing and say, okay, my kid is going to first grade? I personally am a very involved parent, so I'm constantly looking at grades and everything. I am old school. I like numbers. I can tell you, I like your idea of, the list and going more specific on what's needed. I know right now exactly where my kiddo stands in sight words and everything without this. I know how she writes because we practice, all that kind of thing. I think we need to make it as user-friendly as possible for the parents. Personally, I create a lot of policies and procedures in my job, and we send out notices. Getting people to even open the notice is a task, because they'll be like, I was never told that. I think you're going to have a hard time getting people to buy into a book that goes over badging. I can tell you looking at these badges, and I don't think it's, I think they're pretty cool looking. I would love these as a sticker if I was in kindergarten. I think this would be pretty awesome. But I think it's a lot of information for parents to have. Like, I feel like you guys are up here and ready to roll and awesome and created all this stuff. But I feel like our parents are down here. And I don't know how you get the parents to buy into that aren't super involved in things, to look at all these badges and try to dissect that to see, okay, my kid still needs to learn 10 sight words to master the 67 for kindergarten. I feel like it's a lot.
So that's where our kindergarten orientation will come in. That'll happen about probably like a week or so before open house, where it'll be just kindergarten parents and kindergartners. And as principals and teachers, we will be talking to those parents specifically about those documents, specifically about what the badging system will look like. We will still have conferences to be talking about where students are. But as far as the orientation, that is where we're going to go over like the meat and potatoes of what the badging system is. And we're going to take it step by step. And we're all going to be learning this process together. But I think being able to break it down with the principals and ourselves and going over what the parents need to know each marking period at that orientation will help not make it seem so overwhelming.
How would I know my kindergartner is ready to move to first grade? Like right now, I know her grades right now and I know she's going to first grade, but how would I know under this
I
system?
don't think it's black and white. I don't think we can say X number of badges means this. I think it's dependent on a lot of different variables. What is happening, what's going on with that particular child. You'll be in communication. If we go, we've talked about doing more parent-teacher conferences, so you would know explicitly what your child knows or does not know.
That's where the dialogue between teacher and parent becomes so critical. As you look at that skill-based analysis, you're going to have a pretty good idea of where your students sit relative to the standard and skill acquisition. The complementary pieces that is the ongoing dialogue with an awesome teacher, where they can really unpack what students are at their skill acquisition pathway with parents. And we are looking at to do that on a more regular.
But then when we move to first grade, if we don't have badges and then we're getting back to numbers, I personally did not like the 1 to 4 or whatever we used to do with, I hated it. I had no idea where my kid was. We always ended up with 4s at the end. You always move upwards. It's just the trend that happens. I like the number system. I would like to see the number system continue maybe along with this. That gives me more in-depth analysis of where my kiddo is. If it's, I know where she is, but I would love to, more in-depth. I just feel like it's not speaking the parents' language. And I think it's going to be hard to move from kindergarten to then first grade through 12th under a number system. I hear what you're saying. My kiddo went to nursery school and junior kindergarten, and they did like color charts, for instance, for rewards and things. Right now, like they used to get rewarded for doing well in iReady and things like that. I'm just having a hard leap because the kids aren't looking at the report cards going, I got 100 in reading. The parents are, and that makes sense to them. If you have a worksheet.
What makes sense about that though? I think if you have a parent that looks at the number and says they have an 85, like what does that mean to them? I think this almost goes a little bit further because it does explicitly show
It does.
every individual skill
It
that they've
does.
learned.
But couldn't this complement that grade then? Like, why are we so opposed to grades? Like, number grades? Is there like, I'm seriously asking, is there a reason we're so opposed to grades? Because the kids don't care about the grades.
To make it more child-centered, where the child has the buy-in on what they want to do. And then the checklist piece goes to the parent to tell them, these are exactly the skills that your child has. That is an all-encompassing list of everything we have to cover. That wouldn't necessarily be, something to overwhelm the parents with. Now, what we said, we can have the badging book that explains everything in depth, and the parents that want to go in depth will, but the simplistic checklist of these are your letters, these are your numbers, these are your sight words. Your child knows all of these things. That's the basics, and most parents can understand that at the basic level. So, and then we have a badge to go with each one of those skills, and that gives the kids the buy-in. So, because the kids don't understand, like if we say we're doing this for a grade, this is important, make sure that you do your best work, that means nothing to them. They always just do what they do. So this allows them to have a goal in mind when they're doing what they're doing. And they understand more of what the goal is at the end. And as far as that list, those things are things we are already assessing all the time. It's just, you just see the percentage grade of that from the report card. This is just going to show you a breakdown of every skill that's going into that percentage grade. But we're just taking away that number and showing you the skills that your child knows.
I got it, but if somebody's looking at it quickly, say, how, you know what I mean? I don't know. I just feel like it creates another level on parents to be able to, the ones that aren't as involved,
And I
to
personally just
assess.
say with the grades and we send that checklist home, I have more parents comment on the checklist that checklist that was sent home than the percentage report card.
Absolutely, I do too.
But I'm not
They
saying the
don't
checklist isn't good. I like the checklist.
They just don't look at the numbers. That's what I'm trying to say. They're not looking at the numbers. It's what can my kid do? What can't they do? What can I work on them with? That's just overall, the population of our parents in the district are not looking at the numbers. They are looking at what can my child do, what they can't do, what are the skills that they need to know.
What can I work on
Yes.
to help them?
I think all parents ask that. I'm not saying the checklist isn't good. I like the checklist. I just wish it would complement with the grade rather than the grade just goes away. Because then we go to first grade and we don't have badges, stuff like that. It feels more like we're going, I don't know, it feels more like when we were in junior kindergarten with my kiddo in kindergarten. Like you know what I mean?
Kind of where we are though with some of our students coming in, that we don't need them to know anything coming in. So when they do come in, we're really focusing on the absolute basics of how to function in a classroom. And this is where we're at. This is what makes sense for them and for our parents to understand it.
And I welcome, like, you guys can come into like my classroom anytime just to see the population of students that are in our classrooms. Because yes, you have your own child, but your own child is very different than Timmy that is across from him. I would love for you guys to just come in and see a kindergarten classroom right now and see the type of students, the average student of Milton, and why this is what's best for them.
But I also think, just to comment on that, like, I think we're talking about our community, but this is, I just said that to Mrs. Rance, like, I've been in K2 for my life in education, pretty much. This has been the debate. What is the best way to communicate it out to parents, and how do we look at it? And as much as we tried to move away in elementary to a 1, 2, 3, 4 to match PSSA scoring, right? Because that was what the state was pushing. We saw that struggle with parents. We've gone back to percentages. Why? No other reason than it's what we all understood, and parents can register a B and A. And I don't think we could ever find a way, maybe down the road, that doesn't exist in the intermediate to middle to high school level. I think the ultimate question is how do we take our lowest our lowest learners, meaning our K1-2 students, K1, maybe it's K1, maybe it's K1-2, skill base, get them to a skill set, set that as a standard. And then what is that leading into when it comes to percentages and how that looks, right? Because, and I'm going to dive into this here in a minute. When we talk about why the realignment, why that conversation. I think one of the benefits that we're going to share is that we can have a K3 building. How does that get us to an understanding? We know third grade is a magical year. Third grade is where that divide comes on. They're ready to learn, ready to read, ready to go. Where's that? Where do they go? How far can they go from there? So how do we create a primary atmosphere that pushes that? So I think there's a lot of great conversation to be had. I think it's the constant debate on percentages versus, explicitly telling parents, this is where it's at. So it's not an easy, it's never been, if it was an easy solution, everybody would have it. We wouldn't be in debates about, the best way to communicate it.
Did you have more
I know,
questions?
sorry, I'm done. Thanks, ladies.
Good on that?
Thank you all.
Thank
Appreciate your time.
So the next step in this, we met in February, in March. We began the conversation on, from a budgetary standpoint, from an organizational standpoint of what the future of Milton looks like. In that conversation, I shared with all of you that our intention as a leadership team, after multiple conversations, is to discuss what the future looks like. What is our projection? How do we move forward as a district? So I think, Dwayne, if we're ready, we'll put the K5 presentation. This, I know this is one of these that will get a lot of attention, and we want it to get a lot of attention. And I'll go back over what I said before. We're starting tonight. Yes, we are going to make a recommendation to you. Why? So people are hearing that this is what we are saying we believe is the future of Milton. It is only the opening of the conversation. Now, I know it's probably been discussed for many, many months, maybe years, but we're setting it tonight. We want to have that discussion with all of you of what steps should we be going with next? How do we get involvement? How do we get community feedback, parent feedback? What does that look like? And I think I told you prior that the goal would be in October discussion of where are we moving forward in this direction. So everyone's clear on that. So we'd be prepared for 24-25, not for next year, 23-24. So with that said, beginning with the elementary education realignment, we're anticipating Bachner's construction will be done. We will be then opening in 24-25 a completely renovated building. Just to be clear, once again, we plan for fifth grade to all be at White Deer next year. Why is that? We will always have a pod at Bacher closed next year. So there's a section of a building that is not available. Mr. Stetler has a letter ready to go to families. The elementary principals, they have a letter ready to go to our fourth grade families here in the next week or so to share this is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. So we communicate that for 23-24. But let's dive in here a little bit on 24-25. So what does elementary education realignment look like? And our team is going to jump in. Why reconfigure? When we say reconfigure, we're just now on a global, looking at this from all grade levels in one spot. Okay, so by having all grade levels in one spot, why do we think that's important? First and foremost, when you look at staffing, you look at our kindergarten team sitting here, if they're all in one spot, we can balance our staffing to match our class size. That is there reference there. We have common planning, they're all together. Continued student connections. I think for all of you, one of the major things that resonated with me is the shared culture, school community pride. We are Milton. I'm not saying that, small schools aren't important. They need to be, this conversation, White Deer is part of this conversation. But what we're looking at is that idea of it's a shared culture and community coming together beginning in kindergarten. Our students, that's what our recommendation is going to be, would start with us in kindergarten all together in one building. And establishing relationships. They get to know everybody within a building before they shift to a next building. Every student gets to experience both of our elementary schools. So that's the overall benefits of just reconfiguring. I'll turn it over to any of the principals or leadership team, anything else you want to share from the benefits of that kind of reconfiguration. Did I cover everything? Good.
The class size and student scheduling piece is a really important factor in that slide. But bringing all of our grade levels together to do would allow us, especially in the third grade world, to go back to the art. The goal of having that organization is that we have content from experts that are able to
So the recommendation, really, going to the next slide, is we could look at multiple options, but here's the recommendation we're making. Why K3 at Bacher? Maybe to some of the conversation we just had here. We put our earliest resources with our youngest kids. And when you're looking at reading specialists, when you're looking at title funding, we can, all kids at that level are there. We can put that heavy emphasis in those areas. They're not split between two buildings. Again, references that reading specialist team and what they can do. I think a big piece is the younger students being at a building for 4 straight years. And I give you just my personal experience in my K1-2 world, that extra 4th year. I think a lot of parents will like that their student is in one spot for that. It also, just what we talked about, those 4 years are that baseline for everything else. It allows us in that school to really build a culture around where do we expect kids to be? How do we communicate that out to our families? They're all there experiencing that together as a community. Speech therapy is always a major thing when you're dealing with K1, that early level. So I think that's, again, the ratio there and the fact that they're all in one spot, benefits us. And simple, but it's very, very important is that last one, with the renovation and where we're going to put kindergarten, every room would have a bathroom. And that's an important, it seems simple, but it's an important piece of the puzzle when you're talking about kindergarten students.
Highlighting a couple of those bullets, early literacy. Instruction for K-3 is primarily based around teaching math skills. So having building alignment, instructional practice, students will be at a building longer before I have students start their academic one building, spending 4 years that really lays the foundation of full pride, allowing students to have support in the system of previous teachers, the relationship, moving. Next slide, 5th grade. But these 4 years are taking the child back to school that I talked about. Bad, enjoyable experience. Research shows that the relationship of students built with school staff benefit on their education. Speech therapy, talking about that and having those resources along with the reading specialists, allows for better collaboration between the special education department, regular ed teachers, with all the resources in that area, especially really
Anything else? So the benefits then of 4, 5 are right there. I think, Mr. Stetler, the words intermediate atmosphere, looking at that ability for those 2 grades to come together, have their own opportunity, their own school there, to prepare for middle school. And how do we define that intermediate atmosphere is specific academic program that's tailored to 4 and 5 that was just referenced there a little bit with departmentalizing. Builds confidence and maturity. That idea of getting them prepared for those tough years when they're in middle school, that it's a little bit of a smaller environment that they all get to experience, and building that confidence as they go forward. Grade level appropriate activities, just meaning that, with the 4 or 5 building, you have the opportunity to do some tailored, unique things for that age level. leadership skills. Again, it's that targeted, you're not, hopefully it's about 280 some kids in that building, so it's a little bit smaller, but it allows them to develop that leadership before coming to the middle school. And size wise of the buildings, one of the other goals of this is we have room to grow in both Bacher and White Deer with this configuration. We're not maxed out on spacing. We can have opportunities for our specialists to have areas and meeting or, reading teachers and all that to have space to actually conduct their, right now, I think we use every nook and cranny and cupboard we can find. So it's, that's that piece of having the space to do the activities. Other thoughts?
The words intermediate atmosphere actually came from one of our current grades. And one of my conversations along with Dr. McCarthy this year, they shared that having fifth grade, fourth grade in the back hallway of Lake here has created a bigger atmosphere of a community that where the opportunities to have shared dialogues between classes, to have the opportunity to do projects across our grade level spans, have some real collaboration. Our academic program, as I referenced earlier, we see our students experience some great things in their learning and prepare them for middle school life. Grade level appropriate activities right now when we plan our PBIS incentives, our quarterly incentives, we have to approach that from a K-5 framework because that's the reality of our buildings. So being able to bring things more in line with our interests is going to be a more positive motivator of our students' work, cost points, and learning. Along with looking at additional spaces, we have some incredible STEM resources in this district that right now due to construction at White Deer, at least the reality of the configuration, we have all of those STEM resources in our library. And so they're not spread out, they're not easily accessible by teachers and students. And we're having a library class in the spaces. Under a framework of reconfiguration, we would be able to design a number of students at White Deer that would allow and pair with our upcoming skills curriculum to make sure that students have hands-on experiential and
Wait, will you go back to the first slide?
Did you say that again?
Wayne, will you go back to the first slide? We missed this and Mr. We needed that. That slide, that on the right-hand side there, that is terms that Mr. Stetler, when building this, that came from our kids of what, when we talked about that importance for reconfiguration. That was fifth graders. When we met with fifth grade and said, what do you think? This is kind of what they talked about in that experience. I just wanted to make sure we pointed that back out, but where those words actually came from. So this is a very heavy, we're discussing it tonight. Yes, we are sitting here saying this is the recommendation. I want to be very clear so we're not missing on that with anybody from the public. We believe we need to make a recommendation to start a healthy conversation. We go forward. However, we also recognize there are considerations that have to be discussed. For the next slide. So and these are only highlights. Believe me, there's a lot more conversation that has been going on. What could you do differently? We know we could keep K-5 and K-5 at each building. We do not believe that does anything good for our resources. Could you consider K-1 at White Deer and 2 to 5 at Bacher? Yes, you could. Why did we choose to go with the initial plan? We believe the maximizing of resources is just better in a K-3 model than a K-1 model in starting our students in our schools. We also recognize number 2 on there is probably the most important piece of the puzzle to ensure that if we're going to in October vote to do this, we are clearly articulating how transportation looks. We have met, I told you we have our subcommittees. One of the subcommittees is busing. We are putting together that plan of what does that mean? How does that look? How do we show runs, where those runs will go, what it will look like from a time frame if we do this reconfiguration. That will be part of that conversation in October before any decisions are made to do this. We recognize that the efficiency must be there. We also know playgrounds are important. What does the playground look like for a 4 or 5? Do we adjust things? What can we do over there? As we build if we do that with Bacher and we're making the final decisions, we're picking for the playground. Is it suitable to all our students? We also talked about the impact on parents and guardians of if you've got a third grader and a fourth grader and they're in two different buildings. I know many people in this room live that now. I live it with 3 different kids in 3 different buildings right now. That's important to discuss. And we also talked about specialists. Our specialists are a key part of every day and what we do and how do we use them and how do we maximize their time. So lots of things to consider. But within this topic, where we are today is sharing publicly that this is the intention. Now, my question for you as a board, my question for anybody, the leadership team is, where would you like to see us go next in this process to ensure we're engaging everyone in the conversation? What would you like to see happen next to ensure I think, Mrs. Kessel, what you just said previously is, how do we get parents to open the letter? How do we get them to really know this is what we're considering doing? What would you like to see happen? You think community forum, like going out, opening up, saying, these are the dates, we will be available, come ask questions. Is that a healthy way to ensure we're getting feedback? Okay.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you're thinking about from your perspective we want to do to keep the conversation alive over the next few weeks before school ends?
I think doing an actual like in-person form is probably the best route to try and get some type of feedback from them. I mean, surveys may get a response, some type of, email may get a response. But I think the best way to try and get a turnout is to try and do some type of physical interaction to get something from the parents.
Now, I will say, we are working right now, Mr. Gemberling and I, we're working to ensure we get these meetings posted under our community feedback. I'm going back to the beginning of the year. We're going to try it. So this would be there. It's a tool as we go forward that parents could, go back to and say, oh, okay, this is the initial discussion they had on it. So that will be there too. I mean, we can put together some type of formal detailed presentation that we post on the web. I mean, how do we get the most impact to our people to know, look, this is a change that is being discussed.
First of all, I think we need to make sure the board is completely in agreement with this before we go forth to the public. I mean, this is something I brought up to Dr. Keegan about 4 years ago, and she said, that's a great idea, Eric, but I'm not going to tackle that. That's up to the next guy. So, and that's kind of where it left, but I like the model of the K-3 in Bacher and 4 through 5 at White Deer, not only for all the things mentioned, but during the feasibility study, we learned that White Deer is in sound shape and probably has 15, 20 years of usable life left in it before major things need to happen. And being where we are with a 3-way coming through, it'll buy us enough time to see where our student population is headed. Because if we continue on a path downward, in 15 years, we'll know if White Deer is even needed and if everybody will fit in Bacher. Or if the population maintains or heads upward, well, then we can make decisions on what we do at White Deer at that point. And where we stand financially, that gives us a long enough time period to pay off our debt and then make that decision. So from a building standpoint, this is the right decision to make, because if you need to add room or delete a building in 15 years, at least the plan is already in place. The students are already coming together in kindergarten. But I think we as a board need to all get on board or commit to this before we go forth to the public.
You mentioned Dr. Keegan, and having brought it up before, she and I had many discussions about it as well. And even some of the data that was gathered over time in some of the public meetings, some of our parents were asking for it. There's not so much, but some were asking for it and suggesting that it was a good way to go. So we're going to have 2 camps as always.
I think the transportation is key. I mean, I'm still going to be on that ship forever. I think to look at that, if you have a subcommittee create, I personally want to be involved with it, because Montanan kids right now, and this is going to sound negative, but we didn't have a choice but to send them to White Deer, because it was either that or spend $800,000 on pots, to be able to teach our kids here on mobile classrooms. But I think, when we sat through the Montanan closure and watched all the projections and things of the class sizes, none of that came true. I'm not saying it's your fault. I'm just saying it didn't. I want to see real data. So for instance, if you're talking about transportation, I want bus routes for every kid currently enrolled in those two schools and what that would look like at reconfiguration. So if we have kids now, they're going and we're going to move it around for that next year, what does that specific bus route look like with the times? And if they need to add more drivers and more buses, they need to make it happen because these bus times we have going on right now are unacceptable, especially for Montandan. That is a huge piece. I don't want, I want actual real data.
And the comment we've had with regarding busing is most school districts strive for under an hour. Period. I agree with that. Number two is we should really be striving for our younger kids to be on even shorter.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think we need to hold our transportation to that.
And I think, and I don't want to speak for Derek, but I know in that that is going on right now. There's more of an analysis of routes and what that looks like.
From our discussion, that's what we plan to present would be actual, like he said, like by October is our goal for trying to like make a decision to vote on it. Prior to that vote would be having those actual routes based on, like you said, the students that we have right now and how we're going to keep those at a shorter time frame. And we discussed options like tiered start times where some of the drivers can drop off, then go pick up additional kids. But the goal would be to look at the routes that are there, kind of establish set routes that are routine, and really they only change when you just have to stop at various different houses. But the goal would be to get those established, set up, so that way in the future, we don't have these big changes that happen. So that'll be the goal. And certainly before you guys vote, you would have that information.
Thanks, Derek.
I think also we should look into having the teachers come in too, because they're the ones that are going to be affected.
Yeah. So, and I'm sorry, that we, behind the scenes, a lot of conversation has been had. We met with all the different staffs at each of the buildings. We went over that. We've talked about, what that looks like in their opinion. We've asked for their feedback on that. I will tell you, not everybody, but I think the general consensus is that the K3 makes the most sense in 4 or 5 at White Deer. So we did elicit, feedback from them on that before even coming to this point. But thank you. Good reminder.
I think we also need clear-cut data on staff. I mean, we say we don't need more staff, we can cut staff, but then when it comes to fruition, we end up needing more staff.
Yeah.
So I think we need to see the numbers as far as the staff goes as well.
So the initial planning was what we can predict. I will not predict special ed. I'm just going to be clear on that. Special ed is very hard to predict just because you don't know each year how many kids are coming in with what. That's a hard unknown. I can speak from experience, when you have set number of classrooms, one spot and enrollment's coming into there, you can stay pretty, unless you go up right now. From that goes back to your point, enrollment's increasing, that changes everything. But you stay within, my experience when we opened the primary school in Danville and I saw that, I think we had 12, 11, 10. By the end, we were at 10, 9, 9, 10, 9, 8. We only went down in staffing because we were never worried about the one bubble being somewhere else and having to fill that in. So our initial projection right now through attrition is minimally a reduction of 2 in a K to 5 mile. That's the minimum right now. Could it go more if our enrollment is not as high? Yes, but it would be through attrition. But I think that's important in this conversation. It's not the end all be all, but we also believe this is a good way to go because it puts us in position for reduction of staffing based on enrollment. If we're completely split with 2 K5s, that makes it really hard. But I also think we're maximizing specialist resources by K3 being at that elementary level or that primary level, because all your reading focus can be on there. So
I also think from a safety standpoint, I'd like to see the data for 4th and 5th grade. How much are we using like the police? Are we utilizing that? Because White Deer is kind of an island out there on its own for those grade levels.
we're still hopeful we have someone.
Have a 4th one slated, just finding it.
Right.
Thought we were
Right.
close,
So
but
if we're going to make this happen, we want to make sure that the
Certainly.
grades being there.
I agree. And I think it would have to, you would want somebody there. I think that's a great time to really have a positive impact on kids.
Especially those grades.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
We do enjoy a very positive relationship.
Mhm.
Consistently, our first that or even like our building, it's one very thing. But obviously more expensive.
Right.
So if it, okay with the board, we'll continue to, we'll engage parents in conversation. We'll engage the conversation. We'll do that before our next, we'll plan one for prior to our next committee meeting in May. That way we get out there and we, you know, see what needs
Especially
to
the
add.
initial families that it's going to impact, even if you have to have phone calls to them to invite them to a forum. You know, sometimes electronic communication gets ignored. So maybe it's a telethon, calling people. Yeah. You know, your child is going to be directly impacted. We would
Yeah.
really want your
Use
input.
strong language to get them to.
Well, you know, I just think it would be.
It's important. I mean, that's why I don't want to,
Yeah.
we're sitting here today because I want to be clear on
Yeah.
what we're doing, and it's that important. It is one of, I mean, this and the next conversation we're about to have are two major things that affect the day-to-day actions of our kids and their lives and our families. And we just,
Yeah.
we need to move the conversation forward to see where people really stand. It's been discussed. There's not been we're going to move forward and enact something in the future. Okay, so with that said, we'll go to the second part of this. We'll turn our attention to secondary. The recommendation in 2 years, 24-25 is a period schedule. Again, a lot of conversation behind the scenes with some staff, with some students. We had great forums with kids. You know, some of this came from them. I would tell you, this is definitely one, you talk about getting feedback, it's a 50-50. I think people are comfortable in the current schedule. But I also think we have kind of gone through as much detail as we could gather, and we're sitting here with, we want to make a recommendation. Okay, could we recommend keep block schedule? We could. I think we have come to the conclusion from a secondary standpoint that we want to recommend moving forward with a period schedule beginning in 24-25. Listed there are some of the reasonings. I'll read them and then I'll have, you know, the team, if they want to share anything. We believe you can do a little bit more with course offerings, with more periods in a schedule, with half credits versus full credits. I think one of the major things we heard from our students was that need for some additional AP honors courses when it's not taking up an entire block. It allows you to maybe run an AP course that you may not run because of the amount of students. Increased sections of certain courses offered, class sizes being a little bit smaller because there's more blocks. I thought one of the things that really resonated with me early on talking to some of the teachers was the continuity of the actual teacher, being that January hits and they've just gotten to know a kid and then they move on to another course. And also content. I think we've talked about, you could have freshman year, fall or early freshman year, an English course, and maybe not have it again until spring of your sophomore year. That's how it played out in your schedule. I think things that are really that come up quickly that can be concerns are that CTE piece of it all, that structure. We believe we can keep a CTE multiple block piece intact, working with our CTE teachers, that we wouldn't lose that type of instruction. And maybe, you know, a targeted time for our clubs and meetings and some other initial things that engage kids. So again, snapshot of a lot of discussion, but to move the conversation forward, this is where we're coming to you tonight with this. Here are the benefits. Greg, Mike, Andy, I think anybody else want to share any thoughts from this?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things, and you already touched on it, but you know, to kind of surmise it for the board. So right now we have a 2-semester 4-block schedule. So kids have four blocks a day, 82 minutes from middle of August to the middle of January. And then once that semester is over, they get 4 new courses for the second semester. And it is an efficient model. But I think the biggest thing, you know, when Mr. Berge and I sit down and look at it, you know, again, talk with a lot of teachers about it. And again, there are many that are in favor and some that, you know, are hesitant. But when we look at it, we have a structure, and it's all combined here with this bulleted list. There's 8 available blocks to teach throughout the course of an entire year, if you look at it like that. And right now we run, for the large majority of our teachers, a PLC plan model, which means that 1 block each semester, that entire block they have off. Half of that time is meant for a professional learning community meeting, and the other half of that time is meant for a 42-minute plan. They have one of those both semesters. The majority, not all, but a large majority have those. Approximately 40 teachers have their schedule set up like that. So that means out of 8 total blocks, they're teaching 6. We feel, and we've already talked about this a little bit with a projected calendar for next year and moving forward, that PLC model, having that time for teachers to have some type of professional development throughout the school year, could be better utilized in a format where we have those half days, monthly, Act 80 days, professional development days throughout the year. We think we could still meet the needs of that professional development throughout the course of the year in that model. And then in a period schedule, where if you look at something like an 8-period day, teachers will be available to teach 7 out of 8 periods throughout the day. So in essence, you're looking at adding approximately 40 to 50 sections of courses in the master schedule just by that change alone. What does that mean? Well, that means that right now, when we're sitting in English 11 sections that are averaging about 25 students a section, you're going to see some smaller class sizes because we're going to be able to add a section there. You're going to be able to see added some additional electives. When Dr. Bickar was talking about adding AP courses, right now an AP course has to run all year in the block schedule because the testing nationally happens in the spring. Well, that means that course is taking up 2 blocks in the teacher's schedule, which is not going to be needed in an 8-period day. It takes up 1. So right there alone, you're gaining back another course section in a teacher's schedule, and maybe more inclined to run some of those very rigorous AP courses, such as your AP Sciences, your upper level AP Math, that maybe have single-digit students that are interested in taking them. Right now, it's difficult to put that into a master schedule because of how few seats are taken up in a course like that. In a period schedule, when it takes up 1 period instead of 2, it's more palatable and it's more doable. So there's a lot of benefits. And then the other piece that Dr. Bickar touched on, the continuity. Right now a student can have math class from the middle of August to the middle of January, be done, and then not have their next math class in whatever their particular scope and sequence is until the next January. They can go a calendar year without that course. In an 8-period schedule all year long, they're not gonna have that loss of instructional time. Or I shouldn't say loss of instructional time, but that gap in instruction. It doesn't happen for every student, but it does happen for a decent amount of students. Math, science, English, social studies, foreign language. It can definitely happen, and you're not going to have that in a period schedule. Mr. Berg, you want to touch on it?
So just to add to a couple of things that Mr. Rance talked about, one of which the increased opportunities to offer other courses. We've had some really good discussions with some of our staff about offering courses that maybe 15, 20, 30 years ago might not have been as beneficial, but some of those skills that students are lacking at this point for whatever reason, or could use more development in those areas, we now have the ability to be able to offer courses of those natures to kids because we have those increased opportunities in the schedule to be able to do that. So that's pretty exciting. I have quite a few teachers that are excited about offering different electives for their respective departments as well. And to touch on the reimagining our PLC, our professional learning community, if we are able to do that during those half days, those PD days, those Act 80 days, it allows for more department specific meetings, because right now our professional planning and learning communities are not necessarily aligned by department. So you may have an English teacher in there, you may have a math teacher in there, science, phys ed, a couple CTE teachers. So it doesn't really allow for that department level meetings to be able to plan, where if we were to look at utilizing those other opportunities, it would help our departments from a professional planning and learning opportunity.
So from the middle school perspective, you'll see our students in the middle school would benefit or see the same benefits that the high school students would see in an 8-period schedule. But there's also some specific to our building that I feel like it's important to point out. For instance, Pride Time. We have a lot of opportunities for students in the middle school with clubs, activities, band, chorus, things like that. But the The sad truth of it is a lot of that gets crammed into pride time because of lack of opportunity. So currently we operate on a 6-day rotation where middle school band, middle school chorus, clubs, ESL, gifted, all of those things are competing against one another for time during the pride time with an 8-period day schedule that allows for those students to be scheduled into those classes. So they'll have an opportunity to go from having band as a something that they like to do 2 times in a 6-day cycle to every single day. So that alone is positive enough for me.
You'll see, we just, adapted the second slide here is the benefits that Mr. Scoggins is talking about, very similar. But just to bring your attention to that, ironically, as we're sitting here, we just passed the 84th minute, which is a normal block, correct? 84 minutes. It's a long time for our kids in a block. I think our teachers do everything they can to keep their attention, but we also know where kids are these days and their attention spans. 84 minutes is a long time to stay focused. Now, if we flip to the next slide, we're going to look at, again, being real and being honest. What are the potential cons of all of this, right? Like we know that everything's not, roses on all of this. What do we lose? Lab time in science. Where's that? We have to have that conversation. Phys ed goes, it's probably one of the number one spots. And Mr. Bergen can talk to that of having a long block is very helpful in phys ed. But I think you've taught actually in a period block, right, Mr. Bergen?
Correct.
So it's possible. Number of subjects at one time, increased transitions. The number of subjects at one time is kind of the counter to the 84 minutes is now they're responsible for their 7 to 8 courses, but it's throughout the entire year. Same amount of courses, but they've just got to balance a little bit more throughout the year. Increased transitions, we looked at the timing of that just because of, you're moving 7 times instead of 3 or 4 times, you're going to add a couple minutes to that transition time. So we've got to look at that again from a safety standpoint, from a student standpoint. Shared staff is always an issue. That's not going to change no matter what we do. And I also think this was one of the things I wanted to add to it is there's a perception that, wow, now that there's not an 84-minute block, homework's going to go up. And I understand that's a perception. That's a conversation we need to be having with our staff on same amount of content you're teaching, you're teaching it over the year now, not in the block. So how do you balance that time? Because it's not, I'm not going to be someone that sits here and tells any of you that I'm a firm believer that the amount of homework is something that is necessary. Can I be convinced when it comes to honors and AP courses, that's what the student has asked for because of that? Certainly. The day in, day out, some of our kids are working a job, going home, trying to survive. So I don't want that to get lost in this, that it's not a consideration, but that's our job to make sure the schedule doesn't horribly impact what homework could be. And it's not the catch up from the other 42 minutes you missed because you went to a 42-minute block instead of a 84. So just again, we're sharing with you a path forward, an idea to move us forward, a lot of conversation. It is important for me to say to you as a board that while every decision we should be making is instructional, I believe sitting in this role that to move us forward from a financial standpoint and looking at attrition and looking at staffing, this option, as well as the elementary alignment, position us to allow attrition to happen in certain areas and to reduce staff. And then to look at our enrollment as we go forward, is it decreasing? Where can we give back a little bit more? This is not a wholesale, we can just reduce 50 teachers. It is a systematic approach, like I told you, over the next 2 to 3 years of reducing anywhere from 10 to 12 staff through attrition. This, I believe, positions us where we're not crushing programming. We're still allowing our kids to have access and in some ways, maybe even still increasing elective opportunities for our kids, even through some attrition of staff. But it's targeted attrition. It's looking at where are those areas. So there is a financial aspect to this. I'm not going to sit here and ignore that, but it's not the end all be all. It's part of our plan moving us forward as a district. I'll pause there. Anything else from the team on any of the scheduling piece for the secondary? Questions then from you as a board? Concerns, comments?
So I was a proponent for the block scheduling, and worked really hard to get us to go in that direction. Part of that was the transitions and the amount of discipline referrals and the problems that occurred during those transitions, and being able to cut some of that back. Since that time, what's happened? Had a pandemic. We've had kids doing online instruction. We've had less engaged families, and the benefits that we were expecting, we gained several. But is it the path to continue on? I'm liking the idea of going back to the period schedule, even though I advocated heavily for the block schedule. A lot of the cons, in my opinion, are showing up now, and not as many of the benefits as we would have expected.
So having kids that have gone through the block scheduling, it seems to be that they have that, like you mentioned, that block of time. It's a lot to try and keep the attention and continue to learn. And I'm not a big fan of block scheduling by any means, but listening to what my kids, 4 kids have gone through, 3, I guess, it is a lot of time. I think it's a great idea to reconsider.
I listened to these guys talk and I looked around the room and I counted at least 12 Milton diplomas that went through a 8-period schedule here in this high school. And I don't think we have to reinvent the wheel. That obviously worked for all of us. And I made it. Okay, I'm here. Anyways, Alvin. So, and I too have, like I said, 4 kids, and the first 2 are block scheduling, and I sure hope the second 2 don't have to experience it, because I like the model we went through school with better. And I like the continuity of the whole year. Being a coach, it's so hard in like January when these kids are like, well, we have finals. Okay, now we're starting new classes. And you can see how they're intense in school until January hits. And then it's like, boom, the next block starts and they kind of slack off because they know they have some time to just vegetate and take their time to learn it. And I just think that the continuity throughout the year, you build up till the end, final exams, and the school year's over. It's too segmented now.
Much better time management.
Yes.
Great.
I think this is an age-old question depending on learning styles. I will say, as somebody who was here during the transition from a period day to a block schedule, I was not in favor of going to a block schedule. But I will also say that I don't think our staff was properly trained when that transition occurred, how to teach on a block schedule. Keep saying 80 minutes, 80 minutes. If you're engaged for those 80 minutes, those 80 minutes fly by. So I'm used to running 3-hour rehearsals. 80 minutes is nothing. So I think that's something that we've seen, teachers not having the correct professional development to teach on a block schedule. And some of them are still trying to teach on an 8-period schedule, but in a block, thus not being effective. At that time, we were also told to cut down elective offerings. We found that there were electives that had no curriculum, had no rhyme or reason. We had theater arts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Kids were allowed to take them with no curricular reason. Same with guitar. I questioned that. Colt Nike took guitar 8 times when he was in the high school. So if we're going back and we're expanding electives, make sure they're purposeful electives and we're not duplicating and padding teacher schedules, because that happened. Also, I'm very interested to see how the band and choir situation will work at the middle school. I would like to review that, because I think that's a key component as to why we have not had a successful band program.
That's probably one department that is one of the largest proponents of this move.
Of course they are. Not in a bad way. Like I said, I didn't want to leave the 8-period schedule. But I think the middle school especially, we should not be, we should allow multiple opportunities for kids to be involved in those activities without making them having to choose something else. That's where we lose kids. And the big talk is wanting to build a band program. That's where it's got to start, because we're building it at the elementary school. Now we got to see it through the middle school. We also, our hallmark is CTE. This will not work with CTE. So I'm very interested to see what the plan with CTE is going to be. Have we entertained having like CTE academy teachers, like an English teacher specific to teach the CTE students? CTE, like creating a real academy. So we could have a different functioning schedule down there than the rest of the building. That's just food for thought. But I'm going to be interested to see how CTE plays out in all of that as well. It might be a hard sell on this.
Need more time in that program. They need their time.
What was your initial thoughts on that? I mean, traditionally, years ago, we had 3-period block or back then it was the shops.
Yeah, I mean, to talk to your last point, Brett, it already kind of naturally happens now. You know, career tech ed is offered in specific segments of the day. It can only be offered in kind of a certain way in the block schedule in itself. You know, there's minimum instructional hour requirements with CTE. If it's a 4, 3, or 2-year program, you have to have 360 instructional hours per year. For us, that's 3 blocks out of the 8 total blocks of a schedule. It's 369 hours. So the way that functions in terms of our 3 levels of the programs, those students that are taking level 1 construction trades kind of naturally funnel into a certain number of sections of English, math, science, social studies, and end up naturally in a lot of similar classes together because the other part of their day, they're in their CTE program. So it kind of naturally happens as is already. When I look at something like an 8-period day and we talk about those minimal instructional hours that are needed, you know, and we've worked up some sample models already. You're putting 3 periods together for the year. You're actually getting more instructional hours for that level over the course of the year than you are in the current model. I don't think it's many. I think it's like 375 versus 369, but you're meeting the hours. You're able to keep those 3 periods together, which is really no different than we do it right now. So in like an 8-period schedule, if periods 1, 2, and 3 is auto tech 1, well, right now in a 2-block system, or sorry, 2-semester 4-block system, block 1 all year is auto tech, and then you tack on another block 1 semester. So it's kind of, they're together in congruency. In a period schedule, they would be together, but just all year long, boom, boom, boom. And then naturally, the other part of their day is where a lot of their academics would come in. So naturally, they're going to end up in a lot of the same academic classes in the other part of their day. But I see it after spending 8 years now working in the block schedule. And I will say, I'm not an opponent of block schedule. I don't think I've liked working with it. I don't think it's bad.
Do you agree with me that there are faculty who don't know how to teach on a block?
Sure. If you go in from different classes, there's definitely some classrooms that you can see are, you know, they're modeled to maximize those 82 minutes. And then there's others that are taking what they were doing in a 42-minute model and fitting it into an 82-minute model. Whereas, you know, it could be lecture, some partner work, time to work on an assignment, that's your period, or that's your block. So yeah, I do agree with you. My biggest thing coming back, you know, I come back to what I said at the beginning is that PLC plan model. I do think that it was done with good intentions. And I think there was a period of time where it definitely was beneficial. But I think when we look at how we maximize our resources and taking that model away and putting it into that half-day, ACT 80-day PD time and maximizing that another section of classes for all of those teachers throughout the course of the year, that's the biggest piece, I think, in my opinion, in moving into the 8-period day. We're getting more courses into the master schedule. We're going to be able to reduce some class size. We're going to be able to expand some offerings. And that's where I think it's going to be most beneficial. I will absolutely, anybody that wants to sit down and show you how we're going to work CTE, but I think it's going to work just fine. I don't really think we're going to lose anything at all in how we do it.
It reminded me of another point with the PLCs. Part of the idea with the PLCs and that block scheduling was born out of the co-curricular assignments. So if, you know, we're working on something in math, can we write about it?
Sure.
How does math interact with science? So having the PLCs to be able to plan and do that was great. But we've moved past that.
Yeah, and again, it's not against those things. I do think there's a benefit to those, and I do think that they did have their time and still could have their time. But when you really talk about maximizing the resources, time in front of kids, course offerings, to me, it's a better opportunity to put that model elsewhere and put our teachers in front of kids as much time as humanly possible.
Putting our departments together.
Yep.
You have limited time to meet with the faculty to begin with, right?
We do.
There are no faculty meetings anymore.
We have both said that one of the cons, in our opinion, is, and I do recognize this, we're going to have to be more strategic about how we're planning out our professional development and how we're working with our teachers. Because right now, we absolutely have a luxury that 85% of our teachers, if Mike and I decide next week, hey, on Wednesday, we need to sit down with everybody during PLCs because we want to go over, something curricular wise. We can do it like that, the drop of a hat. There's no coverage needed, nothing like that. We can sit down, he and I, in 127, half of each block, and meet with a large majority of our teachers. That will go away. And we do recognize that. We'll have to be more strategic about how we plan that stuff out.
So I have one more comment, and this might not be a popular comment. How many years have we been on the block schedule?
I believe it started 13, 14, I believe. I came in 14, 15, and I think that was the second year.
That's probably about right.
I never taught.
So, right?
10 years.
You're at 12.
Wow, yeah, so that sounds about right.
If
So,
we would do it next, the plan is to continue with that model next year would be 10 full
so
years.
the 10 full years. So my point here is I'm a little frustrated with, we've had 10 years to professional development teachers up to teaching on a block schedule. And I feel like we failed at that. Because I feel like I've heard feedback about block schedule. It's not utilized well. Kids are just sitting around. Some teachers do, some teachers don't. What have we been doing the past 10 years in professional development to help foster those teachers along? Like, we may go back to an 8-period day. The teachers who've really adapted well to block schedule are now going to be lost. So I see both sides. Don't get me wrong. I'm not advocating one way or the other, but what have we done professional development wise? Where's the leadership been to get those teachers who kicked and screamed going into block schedule up to where they needed to be? I'm a little frustrated with it because I lived it. That's the only reason I have that perspective. So that doesn't require a response, just pointing it out.
Other comments?
Do we have to wait for 24, 25?
Yes, yes, yes,
There we go.
yes, yes. We need to make sure because again, I think to that point, why are we doing this right now? It's feedback. But I also think the way we're going to get true feedback from people is by saying, look, this is where we're going. Are you with us? And if you're not, why not? That way you get an educated, we come back to you with information from people, listen, learn, same thing. I think I'll put out to you is I think we do the same thing at the secondary level. We're doing at the elementary level. Here you go, families. Here's what we're doing. We're putting these opportunities for you to come out and tell us. We're trying to move Milton Area School District forward in many ways. Come out and talk to us about this. But I keep using that October date of next year as our goal. Why? It gives people time to plan, but it also allows us, if in October we're not quite ready, it's not the end of the world that we're not ready. We need another month because we have some more questions, or you know what, we got all the bus schedules out. We want to go back over that, or we know we've done a sample CTE schedule. People want to see that again. So we just want to be moving us forward. And I just think from your perspective, is making sure you're okay with us really eliciting that feedback from people as we push this, out to the public, out to everybody.
I think also your teachers, the minute you say you're going to do this, your teachers need time to rewrite and realign.
Absolutely.
What
And
they're
that,
teaching
we
and how
talked
they're
about that.
teaching it.
Very true.
And they need at least a year to do that.
I do have a quick question.
The Canvas will be all messed up.
Is a lot of the neighboring schools, what are they doing? Are they still on block? Are they doing period, or is it kind of both?
It's a mixture. You see plenty that are in traditional 8-9 periods. You see some that are in, a 2-semester block. You see some AD. There's a couple that have a very kind of bizarre hybrid mixture of the two.
Let's say, because that, if we switch back to a period, it could be a selling point too, to try to get people to come here. You know, maybe they don't like the block scheduling, because I've had college classes that, you know, were very long, and it's rough. I mean, it's rough in college sometimes to sit there for 2.5 hours, you know, or an hour and a half.
Yeah, no, you definitely see all of them. You know, anytime you see a kid for instance, you know, sometimes they're coming from that traditional schedule. I wouldn't say there's one that's consistent, one across the region, across the IC.
So we'll do the same. We'll get a group here before the May 9th committee meeting, and we'll see where we're at. We'll be invited as well. All right. And we add the student representative into the policy discussion later. We go through.
Yeah. Change it.
Yep. So 5C, I'm going to include when we get to the policy discussion later. It fits better there as we're looking through. Let's keep moving forward.
Okay. If we can look at the proposed agenda items. I've lost my agenda. It's been so long. Items 6A, B, and C. If you have any questions, any of those?
For 6A. went there.
6A.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're up.
Oh, okay. So you guys are probably sick of me talking about the budget, but thankfully we are nearing the end. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. And so now is the time where we're going to transition from talking about preliminary budget to talking about final budget. So 6A1 says review of the 23-24 proposed preliminary budget. That should actually be the proposed final budget. Really, the only thing that I've added from what you guys received last month is this color single sheet. You did get a fresh printed out proposed final. What that single sheet is a summary of the bridge between the proposed, or from the preliminary budget to the proposed final. So just starting at the top where it says the summary, you can see how it's changed. Our projected revenues have gone up by over 700,000, and I've touched on that each month with you guys. As I get more information coming out from the state and I feel more confident in those numbers that we're seeing, I went back in and adjusted those upward. I also was able to pull more tax collection data as far as all of our taxes, our earned income tax, along with real estate collections. And that was included in there as well. So that's where we saw that growth. And then the expenditures, you can see that those grew slightly. And so what I did was, because of that, you know, we're all working towards reducing the expenditures. I highlighted that and broke it out a little bit more below. So in the section with the bottom line, that's green 108,000. That is what the administrative team was able to go through and reduce the expenditures by. And then just below that, unfortunately, you can see where the expenditures increased. And that's really driven by the, unfortunately, the demand for additional special education based on the students that we have coming in and what we're projecting. So you can see we worked hard to reduce $108,000 off of what was there from the preliminary. And in an instant, that can change. And we talk about that all the time. I know the board, you are all well aware, you know, special education, it can come and go and really impact us. So that's where you see the total change in expenditures from the preliminary to the summary. There's a few other small items that I adjusted, but these are all the material changes. I mean, there's little ones that I fine tune, but if you look at the expenditure change, those account for $211,000 of the change. I think it was total of 221. The proposed final budget that you guys all have in front of you, this, if you go to page 5, which is not new, this is the page that has been in there before, but it's just updated and exactly where we have it. This is where, you know, I now pass it to you guys to have the discussion. So unless there's specific items still within this overall budget that you feel strongly about that we need to look at as an administrative team to change, my opinion is, the board's biggest choice is what are we going to do for local real estate taxes? So this page again highlights the potential increases or decreases based on maintaining our revenue, increasing it halfway towards the max that we can do, or looking at the max. So what I would like from everybody tonight, we need to have that discussion of what do you feel comfortable with as a board that you would want to see me advertise, and then present to you as the proposed final budget next month. So one unique thing about this committee meeting tonight is we do have to vote to allow me to authorize the advertisement of it, because we have to have a certain number of days that that's available for the public to review. It's not final. We don't vote on the final until our regular meeting in May. But what it should be is what you guys, not everyone has to agree, but overall kind of general consensus, what you want to see, put together for that final board presentation on the final budget. A lot of you have been through this process before, but some of you are new. So at this time, if you have any questions for me, I am here to answer them, but I'm really hoping to turn it over to you guys to have a discussion prior to authorizing the vote to post and advertise.
First thing I don't care for is on this sheet here, you automatically pencil in the Act 1 tax increase. In my opinion, the true deficit is $2,886,618.
Okay.
Okay, so this gives a false assumption that we're automatically going to approve a tax increase.
Okay.
I don't like to see that. And and this is what gets published.
Well, that's what the discussion is for today.
Well, it is, but
Yeah.
that's the number that's people pick
Wouldn't
this up. And they
wouldn't
say,
that
"Oh,
be
we're
any
short
number I
2
put in there is a false assumption? I have to pick a number.
But like, if you would just put down like the revenue maintained from last year, then we can discuss as a board, well, is that 2.8 million deficit okay? Or do we want to do something to lower it as far as revenue increase?
Gotcha. I guess what I don't understand there is how that's different than like just looking at it from the other perspective. It's the number has to be placed there. This is the same number we've had
I get that. I
throughout the
just-
process. So me to suddenly change it now, I think
Right,
would
but
create a bigger
I
disruption.
think next year when we start the process,
You'd want to see it
just start it
started
at zero.
start at zero.
Like,
Okay.
okay, look, if we don't raise
Gotcha.
taxes, we
Gotcha.
are at, because the whole process along, I've been like looking at this number thinking,
I got you.
I
thought you meant changing it for right
no,
now.
no, right now,
Okay.
but just that's,
Gotcha.
it's been like a misconception the whole time.
Gotcha.
We're at a
Okay.
$2 million deficit. No, we're really at a $2.8 million deficit.
Gotcha.
Okay, that's just, sorry, I should have brought that up.
No, that's
I just-
totally
I
fine.
look at it now and I'm like, okay, that's bad, but that's really bad. So.
Sure.
Can we
No, I can, next year, if that's what the board wants to see, that's not a problem at all. I just try to avoid
Because the
sudden
press,
massive
the
changes.
press looks
without
at that, they
discussion.
automatically assume we're gonna raise taxes and have a $2 million deficit, where that's not the case. We've made no decisions to even raise them at this point.
Can you start with 0 increases in utilities too? Just kidding.
I can put whatever you want in there. We won't be able to hit it.
Nice,
but,
'cause utilities-
I will add, you mentioned utilities. We do have an energy broker that I use. We watch the rates and we lock them in prior to recent increases. So we do have this is a solid projection. I feel comfortable with what the utilities look like. As far as we won't get surprised by anything.
How much do you feel we can take from our fund balance? In an honest, healthy way.
In an honest, healthy way. I would say anything over 2.4 million, I would start to feel uncomfortable. Just because that is sort of where our surplus was from ending last year. And so to me, what that would do for us is, I don't think it doesn't increase our position as far as like cutting into that deficit and really trying to get aggressive about balancing as fast as possible. But what it does is it kind of helps us maintain and tread water as we move to the next year. So in my feeling, I would feel comfortable at next year going into that, we will be in an okay spot. But what it does is it just kind of moves our discussion that we're having today, like right now, and just pushes it one more year down the road. And we're continuing to have that similar discussion, which we're going to have anyway, because we still, no matter what, even if we did a full increase, we're still going to be looking at a deficit. But that's my feeling.
I know we've said it, but it needs to be said every time we're talking about numbers. The quickest way to make moves in a budget when it comes to reductions is salaries. We all know that. That is part of the plan as we move forward here in the next few years, is that reduction. I did an analysis from 92 through current year of where our staffing was. When you look at a professional side of it, we've kind of trended with enrollment. As it's decreased, I think it would have been 2011. Many of you were here about 2011 to 13. There was a reduction of 21. So I think that's important for the public to know too. It's not that there weren't reductions in staffing over the course of time, because that's a big number. That was a hard year for many school districts, those couple years. A lot of that was PSERS related. I think PSERS numbers went skyrocketing over the course of time, that input. But at the same time, we are going to put a plan in place that, while we're talking about the need for tax, increases, we also are talking from our standpoint, how do we reduce staffing to match our enrollment as we move forward? How does that balance come? It's not just about raising, it's also about reducing over the next few years.
Just that's something I want to point out, because I don't know that it was presented this way in the past. On page 5, when you look at maintaining the revenue from the prior year, that actually results in a percentage decrease for our median taxpayer, a millage decrease. I get very nervous about decreasing millage, because that's working on the assumption that we're going to maintain the assessed values. What we've seen over the last few years is a lot of assessment appeals, and assessed value goes down. The only side we control is the millage rate. So if we look at maintaining the revenue and we do a millage decrease for all of our taxpayers, and then over the next few years, we don't see gains on the assessment side, we've lost money. While we may be earning the same amount of revenue, we're putting ourselves at a disadvantaged position, because we now have to work just to build our millage back up to where it could have been. I hope that makes sense. It's just as a school board, you guys control half of the equation. The other half is out of your control. So I get nervous about decreasing the millage. But again, that's something for you guys to discuss, certainly.
Well, due to tax equalization between the counties, Union County will see a
decrease
regardless.
Yep. And that's not unheard of in the past. Recently, since I've been here, it's been the other way around.
Right.
Northumberland's kind of been getting the break on it, and Union has been carrying some of the increases. This is the one year though where it's the first time since I've been here.
Every so many years that happens.
Yep. And this year is just more jarring because of the increased assessed value that happened in Union County, and we didn't see it in Northumberland. So it's, no matter what decision the board makes, Union County taxpayers will be seeing a millage decrease.
That's a gift horse right there. We're looking at gift horse in the mouth.
Right.
Right.
Well, for some.
Right. Well, the ones who come in.
That's right.
Whatever, it doesn't matter.
That's why they're not here.
I'm okay with the full index.
As am I. Again, if we don't do it now, it's going to be a future loss. And and anytime we raise taxes, it's a hit, and people do struggle. I understand that. But I also think as a board, we need to continue our advocacy for appropriate funding of our schools. But we have a very good budget in front of us that, again, this year, like every other, there's a tremendous amount of work from a lot of people to get us to where we are right now. And I appreciate that and all of the extra time that folks have spent. But again, bottom line is we need to fund our school, we need to fund our programs, and we need to give our kids the best we can. So I'm in support of full Act 1 index.
I don't like the term future loss. These are not our customers. These are tax-paying citizens. So I hate when we talk in the word terms of profit and loss as to revenue to fund the school. I've never cared for that term. Whenever we say if we don't raise taxes now, that's money lost for the future. That's terms I use in my business. and to drive revenue for my business, but that's not terms I'm going to use sitting here talking to my taxpayers that support the school and, educate our children. The most I could go is the half of Act One, because I feel that's very fair with the rate of inflation. And I think by keeping it as minimal as we can show to the taxpayers that we're doing the best job we can, but we're not asking for more to foresee or to stop a future loss. We just need a little bit now to keep the school going and maintain steady progress. And hopefully the programs Dr. Bickhart's putting in place with staffing, as he said, that's our biggest one, will come to fruition. And hopefully that'll hold off tax increases in the future. That's my stance.
I concur that looking at doing it in the median might be the best opportunity to give us a chance to kind of see what the district is looking to implement to cut costs. But I think it also gives us time to really look and see what we're spending money on as a district, if it's actually where we need to be spending it and how. I look at this budget, I mean, it's my first year being on this board, and I see crazy amounts of money spent on crazy things. I don't know what they all are. I mean, I know we have a lot of special needs programs, a lot of education, CTE, three different buildings with a lot of staff. But I mean, I just look at some of these line items and it just blows my mind, mainly because I don't know what they are. I mean, I look at line item 650, that's like almost $500,000 on computer software. I mean, that's mind boggling. I just don't know what's encompassing. So I think maybe if we really look and see what software we're using alone, maybe it's an opportunity to really cut some costs. I mean, we have had the conversation about using this agenda manager if it's something that is really worth having, depending on how much it costs. Like, these are all things that we should really look to consider. And I see almost $400,000 on Chromebooks and laptops. Is it something that we can divide across the year if we're really looking to invest and buy? I don't know. If we're looking to buy, like invest in things, the opportunity to maybe break it up throughout the years, is that something that we can do? I don't know.
But what you don't see are the thousands of dollars of workbooks and books anymore, because now they're electronic.
Right, and that's what I mean.
Traded off that cost.
I totally get all that. I'm just saying, is it an opportunity where instead of doing massive purchases like this, where we can maybe stagger them a little better? So maybe the cost every year, if it's something that happens strategically, like I said, this is my first time going through this. And I know that it doesn't happen often where you have someone that gets brought on in the middle of this process. I'm just thinking that maybe in the future, it's something we can consider, where maybe the purchasing we're doing for some of this is done more strategically, where it might offset some of that cost, where we're looking at multi-million dollars from taxpayers. I mean, that's a huge chunk.
So they are on a replacement cycle, and we've gutted Dwayne's budget more than one time, just to make up in other areas. So now it's time to put it back.
No, I'm sure that's why I said I get it. I'm just looking at this, and the numbers are just blows me away. And I know there's only certain places you can really afford to make a change and make a cut without impacting the staffing and the education. And really, what we're trying to invest in is the future of Milton and what we have to bring to the community, and hopefully bring people in to try and, just think that we need to make sure that we're really looking at where we can potentially make changes. But I'll have to agree with Eric that that's probably about as high as I'd be willing to go.
Refresh my memory on last year. We went half.
We did
Yeah,
nothing.
we
last
did.
year. We did?
That was the year before we did.
Yeah.
Last year we did half.
Yeah.
Mhm. That's where my thoughts are. Be comfortable taking something from the fund balance. Yeah, I look at my own budget at home, and if I have to move money from my savings to my checking to set
Yeah, and
spending,
yeah,
do it. And I don't know, I keep working at 70 years old, for God's sake. Friday, Andrew.
well,
Oh.
throughout the entire process, our projected deficit, it was in
truth.
that 2.5 range. We worked to bring it down. So if we go half, it's back to that kind of preliminary budget of 2.4. I do not feel uncomfortable. You asked me, where do I feel okay? I don't feel uncomfortable at that rate. Like I said, what it does is it just, we'll continue to have the discussion. If it, we may outperform. And then when we come around next year, we can look at the same sort of situation where we're different degrees of potential increases or changes. But no, if it's kind of what I'm hearing from at least the majority that spoke up so far is on the proposed budget, doing the half of the index, and then it still has to be voted upon. But that is what, if that's what you guys want, and we have a consensus kind of on that, I can at least advertise with that, and we can come back to that discussion, next month. But that's what I bring forward.
Is this projection is based upon our ability to fill all the positions that are currently?
Yeah, correct. If we don't
So
fill
there-
positions, there's going to be a surplus, so it would reduce that deficit. But we always have to budget based on, what we hope to fill.
I think next year when this time comes around, if whoever may be sitting here on the board should consider if we have vacancies that we've been posting for a while that aren't there, we should definitely look to reevaluate if we need them, because that could be a potential deficit burden that we have that we aren't actually needing to carry when it comes to balancing for taxpayers.
Right. I got you. And my hope too, and I think that we're at a good spot with this now. Through the pandemic, we had high dollar unbudgeted expenses that were added because we needed to. To maintain employees, to bring employees in, different programs that we just really needed to make as a team. I outlined that in this budget book so the board can see that. I think that it totaled up to a pretty significant number, nearing almost $2 million. So $1.6 million, just increasing from last year's expenditures to this year's expenditures of things that came up that had to be added in. So, that stuff can happen. But without that, you pull that 1.6 million out, suddenly that deficit looks a lot better. But that's what we have to overcome. That's what we're building towards. And, my hope is that this budget is structured well enough, strong enough through the work that everyone's done, that we aren't going to see those again. And I certainly hope we don't see something like the pandemic again, or like the mold that hit. And, at this point, our construction plans are well outlined. We finished our borrowing. My expectation is that, knock on wood, fingers crossed, barring something totally unforeseen, we should have a clear path in front of us that we can work towards for a number of years. And Eric, you mentioned it, like White Deer or something is probably gonna be down the road, but we have enough time to pay down debt to look at that. So a capital side, I think we're in a pretty good spot. So I think that this is a good time for us to look forward.
We do know our salary projections because we're sitting
We do.
here with at least another 4 years before we have to
For everybody,
do the contract.
we just redid every
Act 93. So
every
that's
contract.
why I thought, you know what, we're really not looking at that right now.
Okay.
We have a couple of years to get
before
balance, to get balance before that.
That's
So I'm gonna stay right.
Should are we at a consensus at half of Act One, or should we straw poll this or further
I
discussion?
don't know that everyone has provided their thoughts.
That's what I'm asking for, just so we can give
Mhm.
direction.
We need to, our job.
Yes. On the table, thoughts? Joel?
I've given mine.
Yeah, Joel's.
Steph?
Yeah.
Steph?
At least then we can see what it looks like when it comes time to vote, what it's going to look like if we go with half. It's the way the budget currently stands. I think that's.
And that is in your budget book.
Yes.
I think it's page 5. It shows you, it's gonna show you the exact deficit of what it will look like.
Other one, Joel. It's one with the logo on the front.
It's the one labeled local tax impacts down the bottom. Yeah. So that I wanted to make sure that you guys had that, because that's typically, at least in my experience with the board, is we kind of look at those tiered levels. But that gives you a really good idea of what the deficit will look like, and you can compare it to the fund balance that you find in the other section of the budget book.
I would be comfortable with half, but no, nothing more.
Josh?
I would prefer no tax increases, but if I have to make a decision, it would be half.
Brett, what's your opinion?
I'm okay with half or full.
Chris? There's half, Andy.
I think half is fine. I mean, certainly, I don't think zero is an option when we're coming through a year with 8% inflation. I mean, cost of pencils go up, income has to go up.
Correct.
So.
Alvin, you gave your opinion. I gave mine. Lindsay?
I'm never in favor of a tax increase. I think especially this year with the federal health emergency ending and the impact that's going to have among some of our most vulnerable families, I don't think this is the year to do it. I think we have a good idea every year of what our staffing looks like, and that's the majority of our budget. I'm hopeful we'll see more funding coming from the state down the road here. So I would say none.
Well, I have everyone, I mean, to me, general consensus, and thank you, Mr. Moser, for just kind of laying that out. I will prepare it with the half based on exactly what's in the budget book now. So you guys, I mean, you're gonna know exactly what it's gonna look like. But what we need now is just the vote, just to allow me to advertise and build the budget based on what we just discussed.
So with that, I will recommend in the form of a motion approval of items 6B and 6C on the agenda.
A motion and a second. Any other?
Mr. Frederick,
Yes.
Mr. Hosterman,
Yes.
Mr. Hunt,
Yes.
Ms. Kessler,
Yes.
Mr. Moser,
Yes.
Dr. Strasser,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Dr. Weaver,
Yes.
Mrs. Rance.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.
The only other items would be the standard agenda items for this week, which there's nothing of note really there. You want to say on the audit report, Mr. Fink?
No, what I'd like to do though, and typically in the past, and I'll leave it to you guys who you'd like to see presented. I would like to review it. I have done the review before through COVID. We've also had our auditor, Mr. Snodgrass, and do the review. You guys just, if you want to let me know, I think that might be a nice June meeting discussion, just to give you a rundown on it. I can certainly give you a recap next week would probably be a better time, just so I have it in front of me. But yeah, you guys, you let me know how you'd like that presented. But you all should all have a copy of it. It's attached to the meeting, but if not, just let me know and I'll be happy to cover it.
Sure, thank you.
Yep.
And further under finance.
All right, well, you're up next. Just personnel, please.
I believe we just have the proposed agenda items for next week, which are, again, nothing of outside of the ordinary. Questions? Anything further under personnel?
Okay. Facilities Committee, Mr. Hosterman and Mrs. Kessler.
Mrs. Kessler, do you have any updates on Docker?
Do not.
Jeff's got it. Jeff, go for it.
Oh, sorry.
Good evening.
Evening.
Okay, so what have we done? Recently, we've gotten all the rough wiring, all the framings up except the restroom area. The plumbing got roughed in and concreted over today. So the rest of those walls will go up. The rough wiring will go in the bathroom. And then as we're talking, the drywallers were notified to come in and start drywalling. The whole left side's completed. Right side still has some little things to do after the concrete settles. We're going with their NRG has all their control work done. Thermostats are wired in boxes. So that's complete. I've been working with the elevator people. I got the final on that today. I just submitted that this evening. So we will be getting that ordered as well. What else have we done? Okay, so I've been working with Dave and Ashley on food service. So I met with Ash, her people over there, trying to get the best layout for the food service. So the ladies, they're the ones working it there. They're the best ideas. So we finalized that today. I turned that back over for final pricing. by probably the end of the week, beginning of next week, I'll have that final number for the food service equipment and install for all that. So that's coming. Next big thing, we got to start looking at the playground. I talked to zoning and I've talked to Larson Design about any issues with us utilizing that whole postage stamp back there. Said, nope, you guys can do whatever you want. There was concerns about a flood zone. Somebody brought to my attention. So I just verified that whole back area we can utilize the way we wish. So in the near future, we'll be looking at how to best utilize that area for a playground for the school.
One of the other things we did, I think it was since last meeting, was we had all the Bacher teachers were able to see the progress down below. We had a Friday afternoon for like 15 minutes. I would hope, I think, are we at Bacher for the April? No, it's April now. The May committee meeting, is that right? I think we're there. Maybe we'll have a chance to go back down and see that. But it was great to see their, through their eyes, the excitement of what it looks like down there and the progress that's been made since it was a shell initially. So that's happened. And
you can definitely see the classrooms. Yes.
Other thing is I sent that in the update, beginning this Thursday, we're doing our initial, getting the job with SiteLogic, with all the people every end of the month. We want the committee to be there if you can, that fourth Thursday. It might be some second Thursdays as well. Right now we're doing those meetings here to keep them organized, but we may need to go over there at times, but we're going to be very consistent throughout the rest of this project on those. And I think the opposite week, right, is meetings with like the superintendents and all those kind of things are going on behind the scenes. But from our standpoint, so if you can book those, keep those in your back of your mind from the committee members.
The
Second, and third,
second one, right? The second Thursday.
fourth,
Fourth.
or the fourth.
The fourth.
We'll put it out.
And I will tell you, like, if there's something like conversations, like I think Jeff just brought up, one of the big conversations we need to continue to have is as we stand, I feel like inside we're progressing. We know what's coming. We need to step outside the building now and look at everything and go, okay, do we know? What does that look like? Is there landscaping going here? Because in the end, we're going to want to see that. Where's the playground? So I think that's our next reel as a committee.
Yeah.
Getting that moving forward. So
When we have the
exciting.
facility committee there, can we do that at Bacher though? So we, at least we're.
On the fourth
walking
one?
building
Sure.
At least once a
We
month.
can make sure the fourth ones are there. We can do our second ones here for now.
Thank you.
Yep, that's fine. We'll plan that.
You guys have any questions? I'd rather answer your questions than me trying to think what's really going on over there. We're busy every day. It's coming along. Once you guys see all the drywall and stuff.
We get anything from the canopy if we got in the design?
Not yet. Just got a bill for the design the other day, forwarded that to Derek, but that should be coming shortly. I will check on that tomorrow, to be honest with you.
How about the flooring increase that everybody was concerned about last meeting? Has that been?
So I did get $26,000 taken out. It was for floor coverings,
We're gonna do the flooring first.
which we're going to do the flooring dead last now. So they'll be the last people in there.
And the other expenses on it were expenses that were not initially counted on.
Like the stairwells and things like that. That was not included in the initial.
So it's true flooring, but the 26,000 was covering, which cardboard, yeah.
Yeah.
So it was a very productive meeting.
Yeah.
Good discussion.
We got there.
Any other questions for Mr. Hoffman or Mr. Kurt?
Facilities question, I guess it is. So I was just in the weekly brief this past week. I noticed there was a safety and security grant that's being used for new signage. It just stuck out that it was Bacher Secondary and Business Office. Just curious, what's White Deer's adequate, or what kind of signage?
Is identified as a tier 1 school safety and security requirement among districts to have signs in more than one language. So, for example, as you enter the secondary complex and you see the directional signage to go, left for the high school and right for the middle school, that is now a requirement that needs to be bilingual. The replacement of that sign and another directional sign on this campus is included in the grant. Walker, we are able to pay for the electronic sign that's going to be replaced out front. We did discuss White Deer, but there is no power or a network going to the sign in front of White Deer. So that could not be covered under the grant with the money that was left.
Thank you.
Sure.
Is that covering the entire sign cost at Bacher?
For the sign, 14,500 of the sign, not installation or running the wires and electricity to it.
Okay, because I think our initial budget on that was like 85,000. It was pretty high.
Yeah, she's buying the sign, not.
I'm able to buy the sign.
That's what I was wondering, how much of it.
Everything else is covered.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And I'll say, like, I think one of our hopes in the budget, the governor's budget, is there's going to be more safety and security things that we can continue to do things. You know, it seems, everything I'm hearing from other superintendents is, we weren't sure if it was going to be every 2 years, but it seems that's the, trajectory, and that will be very helpful to us if we can continue. I think some of the things that are being done here are incredible, and we just want to keep going with it.
And the challenge at White Deer is the parking lot would need to be, where's Jeff? Right, the parking lot would need to be ripped up to get the wiring down to that sign. So it is a significant project.
When there was no electricity.
I do have another facilities question. I walked the path the other night. Are we finished with the cleanup there, or is there still more work to be done? I noticed the old path was just busted up and kind of pushed to the side, and there's a lot of trees that are still laying.
Ready to go there?
Okay, Steph.
So that's a good one. Yeah, I think, it's
We're
funny.
not going to just walk away and let it the way it looks right now.
I don't know about clean. We haven't talked about all the, I've been doing the same thing, been walking around there because of the nice weather. And yes, I think there's some eyesores with like the down trees. I think the other conversation we had in that area is like, we paved it. It's a nice area. It's a good path. Is there futuristic plans that we could use for that beyond it just being a walking path? I think it's a conversation to be had. We're not there yet. So I don't think we're done with that conversation.
It looks rough. Looks nice.
The path is nice.
The path is very nice.
Yeah.
The whole area
Plant some
is
flowers
rough.
next time we go by.
We need a little
Stick some
cleanup
bulbs in.
first.
And clean up.
There is a lot of,
They bring your chainsaw next time.
and the path is very nice to walk on.
The path is
Except
very.
there was a tree down the other day. I never told you that. Somebody got it though.
We walk, we drive the path every day.
Yeah,
Not me, Steve.
the path is very nice.
Any other questions, comments under facilities? Proposed agenda items, there's not many. Hearing none. Friends?
Is everything?
Yes.
Okay. Legislative and Policy Committee. Mr. Hosterman.
I
and
guess
Dr.
I'm taking this one too.
Foster, You are.
You should have a packet of policy visions or changes. It's a pretty big packet. And I think this really spurred a question of how do we institute a policy change, or how do we start the process of writing a new policy if we want? And then it spurred into, well, how often do we review policy? So I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Bickhart. Talk a little bit about policy.
So I think ultimately we know as adjustments come through PSBA, we bring those policies. There's a few on there. I think as those changes come, that's naturally going to happen as we continue forward. What I just handed to you, if you take a look at the document, is we are outlining a plan. Huge thank you to Brenda. This is a 3-year plan to analyze all policies. We sat down last week. Again, another subcommittee of our leadership team getting this started. We started with 000. We all had to be reminded we were going to go through each policy one by one, slowly and steadily through the policies. He's ignoring me right now. Experience. He started and Andy goes, "Are we really going to go through one by one?" I'm like, "You're not leaving the committee now. You're part of it. We're in." And actually, I think by the end, all kidding aside, we got through 4 or 5 of the policies, and it's very eye-opening. It really is from a leadership standpoint to see the language. Another thing I think that is important for you is what you're seeing inside those policies from 000 through 004.1 is there are now what are called operational guidelines. They're going to be called those in the zeros. Beyond that, they're going to be called administrative regulations. So what you're seeing are some things we absolutely are brand new to us that we need to approve. One of which, if you look at, I think it's OG0 for the 003 policy, then -0 and then -1 are actual regulations on creating policy. Gets into the details of it. So we are going to begin adopting these as we go forward. The 000s, there's 13. You get to the hundreds, and as you see on your schedule, there's 54, I think. Like it's going to be a process. Three things we're looking at. Do we need to adopt new policies? Do we put a revision date if we make a change to the policy? The other thing that I would like to do is minimally put a last review date. I think we have some policies that were created in 2004 that just haven't needed a change. So there's no been revision to it, but I think there should be a last reviewed. So any new board member coming in. So this is it's a great task. I'm actually excited to do it. I mean, you get to see things. So why I paused on the student representative thing is I'll bring it up to you here. I would like the board to consider, we learned in going through this, if you look at that, I think it's 004, told me on this, some of the guidelines, I'm sorry, 004 BOG, or BOG 5, student representative to the school board. I think it is something, when we think about, back to what we started our night with, kindergarten teachers talking about, are the kids coming into us? One of the operational things we could consider is bringing on 2 students that would sit at this table with us. It is their school. They are not a voting member. And again, if you read that guideline, if you read through these, they are not necessarily, they don't vote, they don't attend executive sessions, but they are I don't know, maybe the word isn't elected. It is a selected position by students and faculty where it's not just any kid coming on and just, I'm going to be here, but it's actually involving our students in our governmental process. I think I shared it with you, Mrs. Ranson. You had said, I've heard other school districts do that. But we are here for these kids. And if this is an opportunity to some of our kids that may want to consider this in the future, as we adopt this policy, as we adopt these regulations, if we choose to do that next week, I would like us to consider that possibility of bringing on student representatives beyond just them presenting to us. That they are seated at the table, they are here, it is for them. So something to consider. I know it's probably for more of a thought or discussion. You're going to want to review some of these policies, but more importantly, those regulations, those guidelines, they are there. So that's a quick synopsis of, I think, where we're at. Questions for me on any of the processes, plans for us to move forward with policy analysis?
So everything in this packet is a first read. And policies need to go through 3 separate readings before they're adopted. So we're considering tonight to be a first read of all of these, and they will come up for the next 2 consecutive months before they are adopted.
And it's a process. We're going to work it through carefully and slowly. And
So when I looked at these online, there was also a few about homeschool.
is that,
They're not in this packet. Are they also being considered first read?
no, those are the,
He's following the schedule.
Okay, so the ones that were added on agenda manager for homeschool, we're not doing
Are you
those
talking about
right now.
these?
No, they were with this.
I think it
schedule.
is.
I think
It was
they
all
were,
open together. 137.
It's
they were called like
137.
April policy.
Yeah, they would be the ones I think that we probably got something from PSBA to make
Okay.
some changes.
So
to.
if they're the homeschool one, let me just, so they've been on the agenda for the past 2 months. This month would be the final reading of.
For those.
Mhm.
Okay.
Lizzie, did you have something else to add about the policy?
Actually, as I'm reading this, policy, well, it's a BOG 003-BOG-0, development of board procedures policy, which goes into my question of how do we create a new policy? So reading this, it talks about in board and procedures, the formulation, adoption, revision, blah, 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 written conduct. Board establishes the following goals to consider when developing and adopting board policy and procedure. Not what I was looking for. I just saw it, I swear. It talks about the administration comes up with it. So I'm asking, can we come up with a policy to review that talks about busing and keeping the time limit to less than an hour? Because I feel like it's super important that we put our kids at the forefront of that kind of decision, even as we're talking about realignment, and have something enforceable to say, we value their time, we value their family's time. We want them to come to school excited and ready to learn and not tired from a really long bus ride to and from school. We want to keep their day on the bus as short as possible. I'm saying an hour, but I'm absolutely open to less time. If that means more buses, we get more buses. If that means we're not transferring kids between buses and using a hub, and they have just more buses going to White Deer, we have more buses going to White Deer. We have to address this before we ever get to realignment. And I think the first step in doing that is creating a board policy, which I'm asking you to please consider.
We'll dive in.
So I'm right in that process, right?
Yeah, and so, and again, these guidelines are being created, like we have to get through the process, but it doesn't mean we can't. There's still policy that exists on this. Some of those are the guidelines that we're choosing to, and that's an important piece for you all, is these administrative regulations, these guidelines, they are not things we have to agree to, the guidelines. Like they are just samples that are given to us. We've read through them. We're bringing them to you saying, hey, you know what? We think this is a good to have as part of our process moving forward.
Well, this is recognition of need. So I'm following step one. So step two, collection of data.
I even go through, like, if you look at,
The policy to approve policies before making.
yeah, go back to when Joel was appointed, there's like actual documentation here of like exactly how to run that process that's detailed out for anybody that comes through.
This is great.
Yeah. We even talked about, I think, board trainings. You know, and Derek was bringing up, you know, like those behind the scenes kind of things, like, you know, when you came in, it's very eye-opening. It's very, but just know that in the back of your head, any of the guidelines or what they'll be called administrative regulations moving forward, if we choose not to adopt those, that can be part of this. But we're going to present them to you as we analyze them and bring them to you.
I have a question on this. So this review, this is like through the admins, right? And then
This
you
is,
guys-
this is our leadership
This
team.
is not PSBA.
No, that is not. Well,
Like, you're just using the PSBA to see if there's anything, and then obviously our solicitor. is
Yep.
here. Could we actually consider getting rid of the PSBA at this point?
I would say no, because we wouldn't be aware of like legal changes that come through. We might miss that.
Say that again.
If we don't have PSBA guiding, like what, like the actual changes that are happening at a state level, or that we could easily miss something that
But
we don't want to
Another
miss.
district and say.
What's that?
But want the solicitor know though, all of that?
Not always.
Because, I mean, he sits in however many districts.
There's got to be something better. I mean, how much does it cost? Did we go over what that was?
Yeah, it's like $50,000.
No, it's 12.
Isn't it?
PSBA is 12.
12.
They
You're
write
the
the
knowledge
policy
of
though, like they
those things.
update it
Both
and
Like
send it.
12,000, but one lawsuit can cost 100,000.
Yeah, that's where you lose. You miss one thing on a policy.
Of following suit with the legal guidelines that come out, like me personally.
And you'll lose these regs. That's
Very
the other thing you'll lose. We won't see those come through either.
What?
Those regulation kind of things that are coming through, the guidelines and all of that.
Why you got to make friends with our districts? They can email to you.
I think we want to be on the cutting edge.
Yes.
Just check school code too about transportation times. I'm looking and scanning. I don't see it, but it might also be in school code.
We'll look at it
No,
all.
I checked
Right.
this.
There's language for students with
Special
disabilities
needs,
and
yeah.
Not-
Regular education student, nothing. Checked every local, federal, everything in between law,
I was on the bus.
which is
now.
why I'm asking us to bring it to a local level.
Okay,
because
but
we-
2 hours.
It gets important.
So where does the attendance policy fall in all of this?
Sooner.
What number is it?
Sooner.
We've begun conversations on that as well. We did it, we were not analyzing that, checking on different things, some of the verbiage, some of the wording of,
I understand it takes a lot of our administrative
Yeah.
time with all of
and this does.
the attendance.
Principals don't think that.
Mhm.
You're all laughing. And again, I point that out, like, just because we're doing this review doesn't mean other things aren't going to come up, that we have to pick certain policies and go forward with them quicker,
So that
whether it's our own or PSBA. So that's one we pulled that the other day. We were looking at different things.
That's why I guess having the reviewed time of when you went through and reviewed them would be nice, because if you do have to go through and change the order of it, you know that it was reviewed already.
Yes. Yep. And that makes it a lot easier for us when we go, "Oop."
I like that idea of having a tracker for when they were reviewed.
Good. Thank you. Any other questions on policy legislative? That's all this is, right?
Right.
Taking the next one.
Athletics and extracurricular, Mr. Hosterman and Mr. Moser.
Eric's up.
Athletics.
Like we have proposed agenda items. Which are items 9A and 9B. Resignation of the football coach and approval of event worker. Have this evening unless there's further discussion. Hearing none.
Anyone?
Moving on.
Okay. Education and technology, Mr. Hosterman and Mrs. Kessler.
That's what you want.
Sure. So we have agenda items 11A, which is steel standards discussion. Who's going to take that one?
Let me just lead in. So I think we had one of the conversations that will be very quick on this. Ultimately, a lot of questions always come about standards. Where does curriculum get evolved from? We had a good conversation. Mr. Hunt was part of that. Mr. Mitchell, just looking at different with the new science standards and the content of them. What I saw in that meeting that I thought I wanted to bring to the whole board is this is that spot when people are asking questions. Where does our curriculum come from? This is the key area to go to. And Dr. Kirkpatrick, I'll turn it over to you to kind of just do a quick tutorial. It's a great way for people to see the content.
Sure. And this is, I mean, we could spend a lot of time on this site. Basically, I want to show you where the site exists. So if you go to pdesas.org, you'll be able to not only see all of the standards, but there's sample assessments, curriculum frameworks, instructional resources and materials, et cetera, and it goes on and on and on. Specific to what Dr. Bickhart mentioned, a lot of questions because of the transition to the new steel standards. So if you go to pdesas.org and you type in steels, you'll be able to navigate to the Steels Hub. So everything related to the new science standards can be found on the Steels Hub, along with lots of other resources as they continue to develop new things and supporting documents that go along with that. But specifically, if you're looking at reviewing the standards themselves, that PDF is located on the Steels Hub, and it'll bring up a PDF right here. And one of the things that we can demonstrate through this process is if we do a quick find. So if we're interested in specific content or specific, anything that we're looking for. So for example, if I just want to see science, I can do a find for science and it will show me that science is mentioned 58 times within this document. So if there's any content that you're looking for or any questions that you have about what might be included in the new science standards, this is kind of a fast and easy, efficient way to find them.
And I can't stress enough, it can be done with every standard.
Yes.
So important. When people want to say, is this taught? Is this part of our curriculum? It starts here. You can start with your own search of terms that you want to know. Is this part of it? Is that not part of it? So it's just a great tool, just a quick reminder to anybody. It exists. It's public. It is the starting spot. We are required to teach standards in the state of Pennsylvania. That's where it starts. We don't need to get further than that. I just wanted to,
it's here. There's
always questions about those. There it is. Great resource for everybody. Thank you, Dr. Patrick.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Then we also have proposed agenda items. It's just decommission items for technology. Does anybody have any questions? Hearing none. I have Mrs. Rains.
Okay.
Can we go back to Personnel Committee for a minute? I just had a question about 11B. The dates that we are approving have already passed.
I gotta go back and look at that.
11B, you said?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's common. I mean, sometimes things come up if it's unexpected and they have to take a day without pay, then it's often retroactive. I don't know the situation.
Could be, it could be. I don't, that's not fresh in my mind right now.
That is a day
later. I
without
go, oh,
pay,
yeah.
right? Yeah, so that,
It may be linked to FMLA. At times, individuals could have intermittent FMLA, part days.
Correct.
So
Correct.
they don't foresee them coming. So it would be retroactively asking for permission for those.
So question, what would happen if we vote no?
I know, I always said that.
you pay her.
I mean, that's just, yeah.
Pay her and she got a day off, I would think. We're voting not to pay.
Right, well, that's, but I'm just,
Point.
the retroactive stuff, if we say no anyways, well, then what happens? Like,
Yeah.
Well, it's more if they go on some sort of a field trip. and
Right.
it happened, this situation, right?
Yeah.
Pay her.
it's a nice.
Any other questions? Any comments from any board members? Well,
I have a comment about
Sure.
social media. So the PTSA at Bacher is struggling with getting volunteers, and they were using Facebook and a blog. Apparently, they're not supposed to be using the blog anymore within the district. No one can answer what other format that they can use. So is there another format allow within the district for them to use to get word out to families that they need help? Is the blog really
Yeah.
a no-go?
Know a lot about the blog.
Existed for the whole time I've been a part of.
who gave you the disapproval? Who said not to use it anymore?
I think it was brought up at a meeting that the blog was no longer supposed to be utilized, and then they didn't know what to use as the next. How do you get the word out?
Yeah, we had a conversation about a organized, from inside the district, organized approach to what's been going out, but
And I don't even need to know why. Is there just something else that they can use?
Many years ago, we had a lot of teachers blogging, a lot of people blogging. And as a courtesy, we opened that up about PSA that it was.
Mhm.
Last spring, we lost one of our tech people that was doing maintenance. So when we reviewed who was using it, there were no teachers blogging. The only people using the blog was the PTSA. So I spoke with Mr. Slater, and at the time, he was speaking with PTSA. Said, listen, you know, looking at not renewing that blog server this year. You guys don't want to do it.
Right.
We were under the impression they were going to move on. They were going to arrange for using. We didn't realize because I had instructed them to shut it down after July 1st. We didn't realize they didn't shut it down until last week when somebody emailed me and said, hey, what's going on here? And I basically said this is. I just explained to you.
So is there another platform that they can use within the district? I think what they liked is it connected, I don't know any of this, but I think it connected to our website. So they're just trying to find another platform that connects to the school.
If they go use an open source or a free blog server somewhere else, we can still point a link from our website.
Okay. One of the things also that I've tried to do under the Title I parent involvement area or family involvement area is post up and coming events.
Mhm.
So as PTSA's presidents have said, hey, Daphne, can you put on such and such? Like, we've really tried to maintain that and update
Okay.
that content. So anytime there's anything that you would like posted there, I'm happy to do that.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
it's the epidemic of no one wanting to volunteer. I look at Kevin and Amy sitting there, and I know that we talk all the time with boosters that nobody wants to volunteer.
Right, but now
Period.
we don't even have a way to
Period.
get the
Right.
word out.
So what we can do to do that, yep.
It's tough.
Could we
Who
link
runs
the
our social?
Facebook page though? Sorry, Steph.
We do sell Facebook page.
No, but can we link the PTSA's Facebook page to the Milton website?
Yes.
That might be an easy clickable kind of link. would take them, maybe it could go to the volunteer page. We might have more than 40 people sign up.
So how do we do that? How do we get the Facebook page linked to the?
Yeah, it does.
I would just get it to you guys. Yeah, see what we can do. Yep. Okay.
Between Dwayne and Daphne, they have overwrite to the main webpage to add things to it.
Okay. Who runs the social media for this?
So right now we have the Panther Media team, which results in any building leader, but also Norm is involved in that from our social media aspect. Some of the coaches get involved as they can.
Okay.
I say Norm, Mr. Jones, it should be.
I know what you mean. So we recognize our older athletes who are athletes for the district, but the younger athletes don't get recognition. And I know we just had a swimmer in the middle school get 2 state medals, and his dad sent in a post, and it didn't get put up right away. And then he went to Mr. Jones to have it put up. So how do we recognize the younger athletes?
So anything,
Part of our school.
yeah, anything that gets sent, there's like that, we added, I think it's we have a media team on email, like anything that comes through is getting to multiple people to do that. So we just need it.
Okay.
Does it mean everything that gets sent gets posted? Maybe not, but ultimately we tried to create a venue where that's where you go to get the information to, so it's seen, so we can get it out there.
Okay.
So there is a venue for it. It's just
Okay.
making sure it gets there.
All right. I noticed Positive Panthers have not been posted this time around for Walker. I think it was for White Deer. But I can't see the Facebook page anymore for Milton. So I don't know if there's a glitch somewhere, but I have lost all connection to the Milton Facebook page. But I think it happened about the time that we lost the email.
Oh,
I don't get. a
how would
lot
that
of-
connect? I don't know. how
I
that's-
don't get a lot of the stuff, even the vaping stuff. I didn't get any of that. I have 2 kids in 2 different buildings.
Some of that Sapphire base
Didn't
probably.
get
soon.
either announcement,
Look at that.
nothing. I'll have to check your community portal.
Yeah.
I got nothing.
Email's
No, no
finicky.
text,
It definitely,
no nothing.
the email is definitely weird, like certain emails, because the way it's set up, I guess maybe if you have duplicate kids, the more than one kid or whatever. Some emails like think it's a spam because it comes back as a do not reply. So I don't know if maybe.
I don't even
this-
get those. I used to get those.
Yeah, I wonder if maybe we had an issue where I work. Some.
We we finally gotten past some of the issues we were having, but we can look at what's in your profile and
Yeah, I mean, I used to get everything. Now I get nothing. So
I've
been mad, right?
About this
I
meeting,
don't-
with the spam.
sometimes I see that number come across, I'm like, oh,
right.
thank you.
Question, why we're here, because I'm going to ask for a motion to go into executive for personnel and legal.
So moved.
Motion and a second, all in favor signify aye.
Aye.
We'll have no more business when we return. Thank you all. See you next Tuesday. It's a mess. I don't even know where to start. I don't even know where to